Alan Moffat, it was exactly 1 year ago where you first ran the peripheral port Mazda RX-7. A lot's happened in that time. A lot of people take your challenge much more seriously in the small car.
Well, I hope they would, but people take challenges seriously no matter what you're doing. And it's very professional racing today, Evan, and we're happy with our little RX-7, but on this circuit it still doesn't have enough horsepower to stay with the V8s.
How's it likely to go over the longer distance of the race, though, because durability is a factor in your favour?
It's a factor, but we also have a red line, a maximum revolutions per minute red line, and I'm stretching it pretty hard to get the time I have to qualify. I wouldn't like to have to drive it that hard in the race. We're vulnerable. We have to drive it very, very hard to maintain the speeds we're doing.
You took a great gamble moving down into a smaller car. Has it been justified?
Well, I didn't really take a gamble at all, because when I was approached by Mazda, I could see their worldwide involvement, their parts program, their assistance to racers around the world, and compared to where I had been, I didn't consider that a gamble at all. I'm delighted to be able to put a professional team together with the assistance of Peter Stuyvesant, and naturally enough the Mazda distributors and dealers around Australia. But it's still the crew that put the final car together. I can only ask them what to do. They have to do the work. I have to get the seat of the pants feel, and the slightest little adjustment can transform this thing from a rocket into a sled. And in that respect, it becomes quite a hard job.
You're a more intense person than some of the other racing drivers who seem rather cavalier types. How long can you stand the tension, the pressure of motor racing in Australia at the level where you've been driving for so long?
What other people see as tension is certainly as concentration. I'm not the happy-go-lucky type at any time, so that's you're not likely to see me smiling a lot. What appears to be tension to other people that are not familiar with it is not really tension to me. We have our problems. We overcome them, and as they say, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
You're inferring that this might be a hard race for you to win. How about Bathurst?
Well, Bathurst is a better chance to win, Evan, because it's, well, virtually 3 times as long. So our durability factor at a certain RPM level over the long haul is certainly on record is much better than the V8s. These cars can do 24 hours at Le Mans, they can do 24 hours at Daytona, and certainly they can do 1,000 kilometers around Bathurst. But a race like here, the Castrol 400, is really a fantastic sprint race. Everybody's juggling for position. Most of the head office companies are here in Melbourne. They're trying to do the right thing or look good in front of their sponsors, and naturally everybody likes to do that. And the Sandown race has really now become a fantastic sprint race. It's not an endurance race at all.
And receiving you, can you receive me, over?
Welcome back to Sandown Motor Raceway, and that's one of the cameras that will be bringing you some of the action from the race, which is coming up in a few moments' time. And of course, as we mentioned, a very big crowd has gathered here today in anticipation of seeing one of the best endurance races ever staged at this track. Let's take a look now at some of the top chances in today's event.
Today's Castrol 400 promises to be the hardest fought, closest run and most open race in the event's 16-year history. Peter Brock and Holden have won the prestigious endurance race 8 times since 1973, but past wins won't count for much today against some of the toughest competition Brock is ever likely to meet. The rivalry between Brock and Holden against Dick Johnson and Ford has reached an all-time peak, and Ford supporters would love nothing more than the Queenslander to take the checkered flag. None of the experts would be surprised if this year's Castrol 400 became a Ford versus Ford confrontation, with the Alan Jones Bob Morris XE Falcon entry laying down a strong challenge. Alan Jones knows only one way to race, hard and fast, and he's used to winning. You can be sure of an all-out effort from the former world champ. Alan Moffat's Mazda RX-7 took on the bigger competition at the last Sandown meeting in February and signaled his determination to finish in front after today's grueling 110 laps. Jim Richards has his BMW in peak condition in an attempt to take out one of the most sought-after titles of the Australian motor racing calendar, the Castrol 400.
which is time to start in just a few moments' time. And a huge crowd here. I would not say it's a record crowd, but it certainly would be getting very, very close to it. And indeed, many people have been talking about the possibility of a Johnson Morris Ford versus Ford battle today. But according to Alan Grice, an interesting clash could take place between the Commodores. The cars now starting to line up on the grid for the start of the 1982 Castrol 400. The man with pole position is Peter Brock, and he received a huge cheer, Mark, didn't he, when he took his car up towards the BP start-finish line?
Tremendous, because Peter Brock has a tremendous following, not only here in Melbourne, but throughout Australia. He's been down and out, as they say, for a few months now, playing a second fiddle role to a few of the other drivers, but to come back with a new car and snare pole position for the race that they often call the Peter Brock 400 is a feather in his cap. Let's go and check out the activity in the pit area now to Gary Wilkinson.
Well, it's a very nervous time, Mike, here in the pits at the present time. As you can probably see around me, pit crews are getting ready to do their part in this Castrol 400 race. The cars now coming around and lining up in preparation for the race, and this is really where it can be won and lost, as we mentioned before. Pit stops that need to be as quick as 15 and 20 seconds. Those churns of fuel that you'll be seeing put into the cars carry about 40 litres each. It takes about 11.5 seconds to empty each one into the car, and timing is absolutely critical. And with that in mind, we've got an award, the Channel 7 Stokes Award, and you'll know the name Stokes because they're famous for the trophies that they do make. We have a special trophy today, Channel 7 Stokes Trophy for the most efficient pit stop during the Castrol 400. It won't necessarily be the fastest pit stop. The most efficient pit stop, keep in mind, could win the race. Comes up with that stop will win the Channel 7 Stokes Trophy. Let's take you back now to our main commentary.
Thanks very much indeed, Wilco. And on the grid, let's go down to Evan Green with Peter Brock.
You can feel the tension here on the starting line. It's a real living thing, a huge crowd. The fact that Australia's, well, one of the biggest races in the country, certainly the biggest in Victoria, is about to start. But the quietest man, the most relaxed man I found is Peter Brock on pole position. Peter, how are you feeling?
Yeah, quite well. Good, actually. It's great to see such a fantastic crowd here today. It's really very satisfying.
They give you an enormous cheer. Does that affect you, and can you hear them?
Well, yeah, I guess that's good, but I also have seen all the Ford fans giving me some rather rude signs over the fence, but that's part of the game.
Now, on your chest, you have the microphone that you'll be using to give the messages. We'll get clear. The officials are now blasting the klaxon horns to let them know that the cars can go for some warm-up laps. They're being waved through. We'll get off the track. But when they group up again, we'll go back and interview even more of the drivers. In the meantime, I'm getting out of the way.
Very wise move, I think, Evan. And what a huge field. What a great sight that is. A lot of the promotional people with the respective umbrellas advertising various wares, maybe anticipating slightly inclement weather. Not the case today. Delightful afternoon here in Melbourne.
There's a shot of the field coming along pit straight. Peter Brock leading them along. Alan Moffat just passing our commentary position, also getting a tremendous cheer from the people here. Steve Masterton, the Masterton Holmes car, the new Ford from Sydney. Very, very popular young driver, former Rookie of the Year at the James Hardy 1000. And picking up, coming along the back straightaway, the number 42 car, of course, is the second of the Alan Moffat entered vehicles. This one will be driven, of course, by a name well known to motorcycling fans, Greg Hansford. Car's just taking a couple of slow laps to warm up their tyres. They'll be pulling up once again here at the line. Greg Hansford, number 42, starting well down on the grid. However, looking ahead towards Mount Panorama and the James Hardy. few more racing laps, or all the racing laps under his belt he could possibly get, will be to great advantage for young Greg Hansford.
Well, it's an unknown quantity here, isn't it, Mike? Because as Peter Brock pointed out, the drivers have had very, very few laps to be able to really get their cars in a top racing nick.
That's correct. A fairly substantial racing program over the weekend. The highlight of which, obviously, is the Castrol 400. But many of the drivers have complained bitterly about the small amount of practice time given to the drivers, many of whom are trying to bet in new cars, and be fully competitive for the traditional curtain raiser to the James Hardy Bathurst. And that's a very impressive looking field.
The Castrol 400 actually is the richest race, dollars per kilometre in Australia, and sponsored for the first time in 1982 by Castrol, previously having been the Hang 10 400. And I think the people at Castrol certainly would be delighted with this huge crowd here today. And as Evan Green pointed out, a bigger crowd attending this meeting than the one at Mount Panorama in Bathurst.
There's the Kevin Bartlett 9 Camaro out on the grid. I haven't spotted Dick Johnson's car as yet, but it'll be out there sharing the front row of the grid with Peter Brock, and we'll notice the blue Ford as soon as they pull up on the starting line.
Alan Jones will be driving the RX-7 Mazda, prepared by Barry Jones.
That's an interesting situation. John Shepherd, who's here with us in the commentary position. John, the man, of course, brought the Marlborough Holden dealer team so many of its wins in engineering the team. But in the meantime, you can hear this enormous crowd giving Dick Johnson a big cheer as he comes onto the circuit now in the number 17 Tru-Blue Ford. As I was going to say, though, the situation with Alan Jones having two cars at his disposal, the Ford, of course, and the Mazda. I wonder whether or not come the James Hardy 1000 he'll select the Ford or the Mazda.
Well, I guess, Mike, your guess is as good as mine.
That's a safe comment, John.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well,
Not giving much away.
Each way. But the Mazda is obviously a good long-distance car, as Moffat said a little while ago, and the Ford at this stage of the game has had a great career in that it's won its first race, but a light car with the sort of power that the Mazda RX-7 has would probably be a better bet, I would imagine.
Position, I couldn't receive the, I think it was Mike Raymond very well.
That's Peter Brock.
1, 2, 3, 4, Mike Raymond, over.
Yes, we can hear you, loud and clear.
Okay, mate, well, I'll just go off here now and just leave the radio on, but no speaking, so okay, mate.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Pete, and the very best of luck from all of us here in the commentary position.
Thanks, Peter Landy.
Peter Brock speaking to us from car 05 on the grid at the moment. He has the pole position, and it is going to be a great start. We'll be back for the start in just a moment. You're watching the Castrol Castrol 400 live from Sandown on the 7 Network. Sandown, and we have about 20 seconds to the start of the 1982 Castrol 400. The cars lined up on the grid.
Ready for a start, flag shortly to rise. The front row made up of Peter Brock and Dick Johnson, flag up. They're racing. Dick Johnson wins the start. Peter Brock goes with him, catches another gear, and the two of them are side by side as they come down to Ripco corner for the first time, and I think Brock has won the start and takes the lead. Johnson sticks with him on the outside. Kevin Bartlett is there. Alan Grice on the inside. Alan Moffat popping the nose of the Mazda through a wall of cars as they race along the short pit straightaway. This time towards Arco corner with Peter Brock, the race leader. Second place being held by Johnson. Then working to the outside is Kevin Bartlett as they go through the corner, and just look at that wall of cars. Bartlett brushing the fence as they go through there, and the crowd erupting as they catch sight of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore leading the high-speed dress parade up towards Rothmans Rise. Johnson in second place and moving up very quickly into third after a great start was Alan Grice. And here he comes over the top. Brock in front, Dick Johnson in second place.
And what a great start that was, and the crowd erupting here in the grandstand as Brock widens the gap. He started on pole from Dick Johnson. Will it once again be a Ford versus Commodore race? Or will we see the emergence of other cars such as the RX-7 and the Castrol 400 for 1982? But the crowd on their feet as Peter Brock leads them coming up to complete the first lap.
If you think Peter Brock was popular, just listen to the ovation as he leads first lap. 109 remain. Number 4 making the run up the outside as the Alan Graham car and Grice at the wheel. Up right behind Dick Johnson as they go through Repco corner. The short pit straight away. There's Grice up into third. Fourth is Bartlett. Then back behind Bartlett, one of the masters could be Alan Moffat. Pick that up for you in a second. A brake lock up that time for Peter Brock, but he manages to scoot away clear of our Queenslander Dick Johnson.
It is in fact Alan Moffat in 5th place, and seeing the driver on the start line, Mike, it's Colin Bond instead of Kevin Bartlett. That's a surprise, driving the Chevy Camaro. But Alan Grice in 3rd place, but this is a man leading the race. And still the cheers go around the circuit, all the Holden fans applauding their heroes. Peter Brock comes through first, and in 2nd spot now Alan Grice. Cheekily he got by Dickie Johnson. He's up into 2nd spot, so it's Falcon back in 3rd place, Camaro 4th, but 2 Commodores coming 1st and 2nd.
A great move that one from Alan Grice, but there's the gap as they come back once again under Dunlop Bridge onto this front straight here at Sandown Park, and the order still is Peter Brock in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore, smoking the opposition as they come down. Flags flying, 2 laps completed. 2nd place being held by Grice. 3rd to Dick Johnson. 4th is Colin Bond. Then on the inside is Alan Moffat, and then John Harvey then making a move on Ron Wanless. The Turbo Nissan is the next one back. Then of course Bobby Morris in the 7 Network Ford.
Brock already lapping at close to record time, 12.7 seconds. His last lap, 12.5 is his lap record, so he's going quickly. And Alan Jones in the Mazda number 27, running in about the 10th position and well placed in this long race. 110 laps the total distance, so there's a long way to go. Peter Brock leading Alan Grice. A very determined Alan Grice who feels he has a point to make. The man so often he reckons it overlooked. He points out that in the 6 times they've met this year, he's beaten Brock 5 times. That's him coming 2nd. He'd love to have the positions reversed. Very close, very well placed at this crucial stage. Just opening a slightly larger gap over Dick Johnson, who's now in 3rd place, but dropped back just a little, as you can see. And already in these early laps of the race, a pattern starting to emerge. Brock doing it comfortably now. Grice trying very hard to make up ground. Johnson not able to make up ground, or maybe just content to stay there. A couple of 100 metres back, reckons that doesn't matter, mate. So I'll just let the car settle down, just not lift to the tyres, just keep things going gently, keep them in sight, and see how it goes when the race develops. In the meantime, further back in 5th place, Alan Moffat moving up very well right on the tail of Colin Bond in the big Chevy Camaro. That'll come into view in just a moment. He's got by him, he outbraked him. Now it's Moffat up into 4th place, and that's a driver to watch coming right towards you now, Alan Moffat. Left-hand drive Mazda going very hard. Oh, Colin Bond touches the fence. John Harvey takes avoiding action, slows both of them down. Alan Brown coming through up behind there. That big Camaro, a lot of car to handle. Colin Bond definitely put a graze down the right-hand side of the car there.
That's the 2nd time he's grazed the fence on the exit to Arco, and they're going up very quickly on the inside is Ron Wanless in the Recar Mirage Commodore, and he picks up 1 spot. Alan Moffat in the Peter Stuyvesant Mazda doing it nicely. The next one through is John Harvey in the 2nd of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores. And then dropping back a little off the pace is Colin Bond. Alan Jones 13th at the moment in the field in the Mazda RX-7.
Another change, by the way, I noticed on the start line, you mentioned Ron Wanless. Actually, Gary Rogers has taken over the car for him, so a 2nd surprise. We have Colin Bond rather than Kevin Bartlett in this car. Let's look for the damage. It seems that the mudguard flare have been worn away from the car. They're in traffic already. Here they are, so early in the race. And they're already lapping cars, which is going to make it a busy time for the drivers of these faster cars, and an embarrassing time for the slow ones. Oops, one of the Mazdas has gone off there, and that looks...
Paul Jones.
Paul Jones is number 44. He's parked it. I don't think he's had any accidental problem. It's just something with the car. He's taken it, I suspect, to a clear spot, but no, he's trying to get it going of the car, but bringing his RX-7 up towards the track, and he will now regain speed and try and stay out of the way of the cars looming up behind him.
We have a wall of slower cars, not slow in their own race, but of course the race leader will be coming up on them very, very shortly, and here he comes now.
4 different classes, in fact, according to engine size. The fastest, Peter Brock and Dick Johnson on the front row of the grids in their Commodores and Mazdas, and one just being passed then was James Myhill, the South Australian, racing for the first time here at Sandown Park, a Bachelor of Economics, running his little Mazda RX-7 and qualified on the last row of the grid alongside Alexander Surplus in the Corolla. Little cars, big cars, fast cars, not so fast cars, all mixed up over 110 laps of the Castrol 400 here at Sandown Park, Victoria. Peter Brock, the leader, the man who's won the race 7 times in a row, 8 times in all. He'd love to make it 9 times. Doesn't mean much, except he hates losing. He loves winning, and he hasn't done much winning this year. It hasn't been a good year for Peter Brock. Didn't win battles last year. For 2 years, he's been without the National Touring Car title, which has gone to his arch-rival Dick Johnson. So he'd love a big victory here at Sandown Park, his home track.
2.07 seconds between first and second. Brock's last lap, 1 minute 12 get that right again, 112.6 it is. 112.6 for Peter Brock.
Still 1/10 of a second outside the lap record, but he's going quickly. He's within 1/10 of the lap record going through traffic like this with a lot of fuel in his tanks. Goodness me, what sort of time could he do when the load is lightened and the road is clear?
Very quick pace for this early in a race of this size, even.
The John Shepherd, formerly manager of Marlborough Holden dealer team, here to add some expert comments to it. Very fast. Peter Brock seems to be a real sprinter, though. Likes to go hard. Doesn't enjoy just sitting back. Passing one of the Mazdas there. That's the one running on BF Goodrich tyres. The only car with radial ply tyres. A very brave move. Jerry Burgess just following the leader there in car 33.
Stretching that lead now. It's 3 seconds.
And John Harvey also back putting the wood on Alan Moffat. You'll notice that they'll come through this corner in a matter of seconds. Here come the leaders onto the front straight. There's Moffat in behind Dick Johnson. Johnson gets signal to pull to the outside. We're going to see a great race between these 3 cars, and here's the action. Dick Johnson goes through, running in third. 4th place held down by Alan Moffat. 5th place by John Harvey, and the 2nd of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores. Once again, they approach the uphill grade of the back straightaway. Race leader Peter Brock still sprinting away very, very nicely, and Alan Grice running in 2nd place.
Colin Bond dropping back. John Harvey, in fact, has picked up 3 places. Started from 8th place on the grid, now running 5th. Colin Bond, who started up on the 2nd row in 4th place, has dropped back a little bit. Dick Johnson weaving his way through traffic. Alan Moffat following him doggedly. Johnson is quicker down the straights, but watch the way that Moffat does a real terrier act through the bends. He knows he's got a lighter car. He knows it's more nimble. Won't be such a hard job to stop it, to fling it around. He can go through without brakes, maybe without fuel. Johnson will have to stop. He thinks if he can just provoke him into going harder, wear down the rubber, use the fuel, he'll make Johnson stop for that stop. And when Johnson goes into the pits, Moffat can go by. But watch them under braking as they come down the long straight. Brock is just going through. Here they come, 3 abreast almost.
And John Harvey sitting right in behind Alan Moffat.
Moffat going on the outside. And he's got in. Moffat goes through. Johnson has been taken back 1 further place. And up into 3rd spot goes Alan Moffat. Dick Johnson behind him. Might try and nibble back that lead up the straight now. John Harvey right behind him. To Dick Johnson saying, I'd like to pass you as well, Jono.
Watch this battle as John Harvey pulls to the inside this time. There's our race leader, Peter Brock, for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, going up through the top of Rossman's Rise and now down towards the Esses, still leading very comfortably from Alan Grice, and 3rd place being held down by Alan Moffat. 4th place back behind those, of course, and the real challenge, the one that we anticipate will have a battle from, will be Dick Johnson and John Harvey.
Yeah, Harvey's by Johnson.
Yes. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether Harvey can pick up the gap on Moffat immediately and try and pass the Mazda the next time or so down the long straight.
There'll be no more popular victor here today than John Harvey if he did win. He's been very much the 2nd man in the team for a long time. He manages the Holden dealer team these days. Is quite content to stay in that spot, but is a driver of immense talent, but not a great deal of luck in recent times. Recent battles particularly, if anything goes wrong with the car, it's usually poor John Harvey's car that suffers, and he'd love to do really well here today. Johnson doing some pretty desperate sort of passing there. Not dangerous, just hard from his point of view, with so much traffic. Drivers who have their minds concerned with other traffic, not with being overtaken. Whether Johnson has a problem or not, he is certainly dropping back a little bit. It's a new car. He's run once. He did lead the Perrier Cup at Oran Park a couple of weeks ago and only lost the race when he had to stop to change a set of back tyres. But I think he would have been hoping to be much closer to the pace. I don't think it's a tactical race he's running. I think he's dropping back. Colin Bond, too, has slowed a little, or he's been passed by a few cars which have speeded up. A bit hard sometimes to tell the distinction between those two.
And the gap between Grice and Moffat, 2.73 seconds.
And a great battle going on here between the big V8, the ultimate representation of a big car, and probably the forerunner of the new breed of cars we're likely to see in touring car racing more and more. A turbocharged four-cylinder car. The turbo Nissan Bluebird, George Fury, ex-rally driver, now racing driver of great talent. The turbo Bluebird, less than half the capacity, but with a turbocharger, or, to put it another way, a supercharger driven by the exhaust gases of the engine, giving Colin Bond a pretty rough time. And that's a car that should go through without having to change tyres and probably without having to take fuel. And George Fury, quite content with his race at the moment, running pretty well up there in the first 10, about 8th place, and that's a good position for him to be in. Right behind Colin Bond, letting Colin do the hard work of cutting a path through the traffic. And George Fury, the farmer from near Albury, drives a school bus in the evenings, rounds up the cattle in the mornings, and on his weekends, he races motor cars.
Gap between Brock and Grice, 3.19 seconds, and Grice to Harvey, 3.77.
And a great battle between John Harvey and Alan Moffat. They're passing and repassing each other, with Harvey just in front at the moment, but under braking, Moffat is getting by him again, and they're having a great old tussle. There'll be many battles in this race as we go through. 4 different classes. The big cars we're watching, they're the fast ones, of course, although the turbocharged Bluebirds are in the second category, which means that they're back in the 2 to 3 litre class and right up there in outright contention.
John Harvey, number 25, has taken away 1 spot from Alan Moffat in 43, the short pit straight, up again to the left-hander at Arco Corner. This great raging battle going between John Harvey and the second of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores, Alan Moffat in the Peter Stuyvesant Mazda RX-7.
They started side by side on the 4th row of the grid. Moffat a little faster in practice, was in 7th spot, Harvey in 8th, and they're now up fighting for 3rd place. At the moment, it's held by John Harvey.
I'm sure if you could get a look in that cockpit, Evan, you'd see that Harvey had a grin from ear to ear, because that's one of his favourite pastimes, dicing with Moffat, especially when he's in the lead.
Is there any ill feeling between them, or just intense rivalry?
I'd say intense rivalry, Evan, would be the thing. But as I said, Harvey gets a great deal of satisfaction out of being in front of Moffat.
We should have a ball here this afternoon in the Castrol 400. His team leader, Peter Brock, continues to lead the race and doing it nicely. Second is Alan Grice in the Recar Commodore. Then, of course, 4 seconds in arrears, John Harvey. So the Commodores are running a 1-2-3 after 10 laps of 110 here in the Castrol 400.
But that's a pretty funny old corner over there. You've no doubt all been over there at speed, and perhaps Harvey was a little bit offline or something, so he's backed off so he could get round there.
Oops. There's one that's not going anywhere.
No, he doesn't know his wheels to turn to the right as well. He's trying to now he's got them right. He had the steering wheel straight ahead, but the wheels were turned 2 turns to the right. And the more he tried to get out of the fence, the more he buried his nose. But the Falcon is underway again. Moffat still leads, having braked desperately late there. John Harvey, who went faster on the straight, is right up on his tail. This is the battle for 3rd place. Peter Brock leads from Alan Grice. They've cleared away in the 2 Commodores. It's Alan Moffat who worked his way up from 7th place on the grid. And in the pits, it's over now to Gary Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Evan. As George Fury goes by and into the corner at the end of pit straight, I can tell you that there have been no dramas here so far. The only drama, in fact, is that the scrutineering officials behind me here did move into the pits about 5 minutes ago and declared that there was just too much human traffic here and that there were only to be 2 people from each pit crew actually over the counter at any one time, except when the car was in the pit, then they can have the full crew out. In other words, everybody else has been ordered back over the fence for safety reasons because it is quite a constricted area, and when the cars start to come in for their pit stops, it's going to be all go right down here. We'll be standing by for that action. Meantime, back to the race.
Thank you, Gary. By the way, while you're still there, do any of the teams plan to try and go through non-stop?
Well, yes, Peter Brock has said that he'll try and go through without a stop, but he realises that that will depend very largely on tyre wear, not so much on fuel. And also, Alan Jones has declared that he may drive the entire race by himself, and if the car they don't need tyres, he may come in at about 95 laps and take one churn of fuel, just for safety's sake, and go straight back out again. If they need a full pit stop, in other words, tyres and fuel, then Barry Jones will probably take over and drive the finish of the race. But it's going to be touch and go. Again, the pit activity in the last 15 or 20 laps of the race is probably going to be the most interesting part of the race.
Alan Jones at the moment, Gary, running about 13th place. He's well positioned. If the other cars start pulling in, he could well do it. We've got 2 cars off the circuit, Gary. We'll go and look at those and come back to you in just a few moments.
Okay.
Now, let's see who they are. Car number 2, that's the Steve Masterton in his first outing in the big car. He's pulled off on the inside. We may have had it coming together because another car is involved, we believe, from our cameraman who's sending us signals. There could be a roof of a car just behind, or is it umbrella, I think. Can't pick up the other car, but we are told 2 cars are off. Steve Masterton, having his first run in the Falcon, the XE, formerly a Capri driver of considerable note, was Rookie of the Year at Bassett 3 years ago, has since been one of the leading lights in the 3-litre class, stepped up to V8s, but out of the race at this early stage. With 13 laps gone. Oh, there's smoke there from, is it Johnny Harvey's car, or is it, yes, it's smoke. I thought at first it may just be dust from the cement, but it's definitely smoke from the car. John Shepherd, what's it likely to be caused by, John Shepherd?
Well, I won't make any comments about crystal balls, Evan, but I'm afraid the only way to finding out what it is, it could be a engine oil leak, gearbox oil leak, and that sort of thing at this stage of a race is very bad news. It's very disheartening to see smoke coming out of a car.
Well, we might have a chat to Peter Brock himself. We can talk on the straights. We promised Peter we wouldn't bring our microphone into use on the bends because it's just too hard and too unfair. We'll follow him around. He's going through the S's now. Keep our eye for oil. Yes, it's certainly coming out under acceleration. Once he's clear of Dunlop Bridge, we'll press the button. We'll talk to Peter Brock and see if he can tell us just what may be happening with the oil coming through. He's coming down to Dunlop now. We'll be talking to him in about 5 seconds from now. Green here, Peter. You've got oil coming from the back of the car. Any idea what it is?
Evan, I'm watching in the mirror as I go past, and I suspect it's a gearbox leak, or perhaps a oil seal leak.
Well, I think Peter's well aware of the problem at the moment and would be signalled by his crew.
It doesn't look too good.
On that forward shot then, Mike, we saw the oil coming from, or the smoke coming from the middle of the car, which would probably be gearbox type, I would imagine, and these cars occasionally...
It seems to disappear in the fast right car. It gets worse on the tight corners, over.
Right, he's saying it disappears. When he goes quickly, it gets worse, slows down. What's that likely to be then, John? Gearbox?
There's a possibility it's popped the seal out of the rear of the gearbox, Evan. That does happen occasionally. It's one of those things you take all the precautions and you don't really know why it happens, but it has happened a time or two.
Well, could he keep on going in the race if it's leaking there?
I would say at this stage of the game, the way the smoke's coming out of it, it's unlikely he would last 110 laps.
Yes, it's the sort of thing you wouldn't mind seeing at about 90 laps into the race, but not at the start, not after 15 laps.
I wouldn't mind seeing it out of the opposition's car, but not my own.
Peter, any signals from the pits? Do they want you to come in or do they want to leave you out there?
At the moment, they're just looking the same as I am.
We'll leave Peter Brock to it. If he talks to us, fine. We won't interrupt him. It's pretty busy out there, and he's got a few problems on his mind. The race leader, Peter Brock, with what we think is a leak from the gearbox, a seal probably having split, allowing oil to leak at the back of the car.
It's a pity we haven't got our noses out there, Evan. We can pick up what it was from the smell of the oil. Can we get Gary to check with the boys in the Holden dealer team pit? They'll be able to know from the smell of the oil what it was, whether it's gear or engine oil.
Okay, I'm sure Gary Wilkinson is listening, and he'll go to the Holden dealer team pit to try and tell if they can diagnose by smell what the oil is. In the meantime, what sort of margin does Peter Brock have over Alan Grice? Peter Landy.
Peter is leading 7.04 seconds at the moment. Grice to Harvey, the gap has been narrowed to 1.68 seconds, 1.68, and Harvey to Alan Moffat. Very, very close indeed. A great dice that, 0.25 seconds in the Castrol 400.
And Peter Jansen in the pits, the merry madcap, not so merry at the moment, having his first outing in the car that he'll run at Bathurst. The clock is on for the pit stop. And we believe that the officials are going to call Peter Brock into the pits. They'll show the black flag in the belief that the oil leak may in fact be leaking oil onto the track, which of course would be a dangerous situation. There's Peter Jansen, not looking too happy. I believe that Peter Brock's in the pits now. Gary Wilkinson, if you're in position, let's know what's happening there.
track. In he goes. We'll time the stop.
Yes, I'm here, and they're taking on fuel, and of course taking the opportunity to change tyres here. Peter Jansen, as you've seen, is already in the pits. Brock's crew still trying to work out what the trouble is with the oil coming from under the car. They've got the bonnet up to see if they can see any leak that might be running back under the car from there. We don't want to interfere with the pit stop, of course, and ask them at this stage while they're working so frantically. The look of consternation on Brock's face, of course, losing precious time. He said taking the opportunity to have a drink. There's smoke coming from under the front of the car, as you can see. I really think it's a lot more serious than they first anticipated. Quite dark, acrid smoke at the moment coming from under the car. You can see that members of the pit crew have the car jacked up, and they're taking this opportunity to get the closest scrutiny of whatever it is that's going on under there. Jansen is about to come out, so we'll have to move from my position, otherwise we're going to get run down. And look at the front of Brock's car. Well, goodness gracious me, I really think that that smells almost rubber and electrical. I don't know what the devil it could be, but
we've got John Shepherd here. We might ask him to try and diagnose from this distance. John, what would your guess be?
It's not abnormal for the black smoke to come off the front pads, Evan, but I'd say that's a bit too heavy. It's more like rubber smoke, and what could be under the front of the car burning, I wouldn't have a clue, I'm afraid. It's very, very heavy, as you say.
The action
is getting quite serious with getting extinguishers out. Yes. It's more than just brake pads.
Yeah, certainly there's extinguishers now working. The fire marshals having a little difficulty actually getting one or two of them started. Now they've got them out, and
they're actually putting spray over some of the mechanics that we fellows there with burnt eyes.
It really is quite confused here, Evan. I'm surprised that it wasn't perhaps a little more efficient than, than it looks at the moment.
Yeah, let's just check. We've got Alexandra Surplus off the track on the other side in the Corolla. She and Doug Clark sharing the car that started in the back row of the grid. She's been hit and bounced clear. In the meantime, back to you again, Gary. Alexandra's okay, but the car is out of the race. In the meantime, Peter Brock has spent 2 minutes and 3 seconds in the pits. And he's unveiling. He's getting out of the car.
Yes, I'm going to take the opportunity, Evan, to have a word with Peter. It's obviously a great shame that this has had to transpire, Peter, of all things, to go wrong. And right now, the debut of the car, you must be really bitterly disappointed.
Well,
what was the problem?
I thought for a minute we couldn't fix it. It looks like we can, so I'm into it.
Okay, right. Well, they've now discovered that they'll probably be able to fix it, and Peter's decided that he's going to continue with the race. We still haven't been able to find out exactly what it is, but obviously the car was losing oil, and with the engine running as hot as it was, it's caught underneath the front of the car, hence all that smoke and the need for the fire extinguishers.
Okay,
Gary. As I said, fortunately, he's found that they can fix it, and Peter's going to stick with it and go back out on the track. Meantime, Kevin Bartlett is coming in, or rather, Colin Bond in the Channel 9 Camaro is pulling in just behind Peter Brock at the present time. No indication of what the problem is there. They've opened the door of the car. Kevin Bartlett's asking the question of what's going on. I think they're going to change tyres.
Right. We'll keep an eye on that, Gary.
We mentioned up.
Yep.
Yes. I can barely hear you, Evan.
We mentioned that Alexandra Surplus's car appeared to be damaged. We've believed she rolled over. We do have it on film. While you're keeping an eye on the pit stop involving Colin Bond, we'll go back to a replay. One of our cameramen has caught the incident in which Alexandra Surplus's car was involved. So let's see just what happened to her in the Toyota Corolla number 71.
And the car has flipped rather violently. Alexandra's Surplus.
It looked like two cars, Mike. There was one on the right there. A white car, may have been a Commodore, but Alexandra certainly got hit somewhere, had a violent roll. She's okay. The car, though, looks as though it's mortally wounded, certainly out of the race. In the meantime, back in the pits, where Colin Bond's crew are working under the bonnet this time, by the look of it, Gary.
Yes, there was no necessity here for any tyre change or anything like that at this stage of the race, Evan, but the crew working frantically under the bonnet to try and find just what the trouble is. Bonnie, as you can see, is very anxious and revving the car, anxious to get back out on the track because the action is passing him by while all this is going on. We might take this opportunity here, I think, to take a break, and then we'll come back and find out what transpires with Peter Brock and Colin Bond both.
Let's recap. Attempt to put his way through those cars. He's lapping at the moment. Alan Moffat sitting probably 2 lengths back behind him, allowing him to do the work. And Tailgate still running a very solid third. Dick Johnson, of course, is back in 4th place. And there's Alan Grice and the Recar Commodore coming up the back straight, heading towards Rothman's Rise, starting to stretch that lead again. John Harvey still in 2nd.
You can see checking the placings. Still, our leader is car number 4 at Sandown, the Alan Grice 3-car racing Holden Commodore. In second place now, John Harvey. And on his shoulders rest the hopes of the Marlborough Holden dealer team today. A gap of 1.9 seconds on lap 22. And in third place, car number 43, Alan Moffat. That's how they stand, lap 22.
Alan Jones up into 9th place now on car number 27. Brasley working his way up through the field, and he'll be a driver we'll be watching. Certainly a driver to keep our eyes on, because he is starting to peg them back. Alan Jones in 27, the Mazda RX-7. Started back in 10th place, so he's been running about his practice position.
I think I just saw Brock coming out of the pits then too, Evan.
If that's the case, he was in for 7 minutes 20 seconds. Could he possibly win with that sort of delay?
I would think it would be a fairly difficult job. He's like the man pushing the barrow, as I say. He's got his work in front of him.
Car number 13, which we saw just being overtaken a while ago, is the young driver David Parsons, who will be the co-driver with Peter Jansen in Bathurst, the James Hardy 1000 on October the 3rd. Peter Jansen, who has done a number of magnificent efforts at Bathurst, having come second on a number of occasions with Larry Perkins. Well, Larry has gone to the Holden dealer team and will drive with Peter Brock, and so he's taken young David Parsons on as his co-driver, and to give him the experience of big-time racing. Parsons is running the second of the team cars here, in fact doing better than the boss, because Peter Jansen had to go into the pits. There's Peter Brock though, back out on the track. He lost 7 minutes 20 seconds in the pits, and that's a pretty disastrous sort of time. He could still finish well up. A lot depends on what happens to the others, but it will take all of Peter Brock's enormous skill to get back into a competitive position. And in the meantime, back to you in the pits, Gary Wilkinson.
Well, Peter Brock is back on the track, but Colin Bond isn't. And Bondy, it looks like it might be all over already, is it?
Well, it looks like we've broken a rocker post, which means that it's gone into 7 cylinders, and obviously it's not competitive. Plus, we get a bit of metal flying around in the motor, which is not good. I think the boys seem they can get the piece out. You know, there's a push rod in there which they can get out. We can continue on, but obviously
It's going to take some time.
and so early in the race, you know.
Yeah, it must be a huge disappointment, because it was quite frantic there the first few laps.
It was actually. I was pleased the way the car was going. We decided that we'd try and win the race, not necessarily go out there and drive flat out. And that was the plan, and we're just sitting there doing it easy, and then we had something like this happen. So it's a shame, but I suppose that can happen, and it has to us today.
Okay, bad luck for Colin Bond and Kevin Bartlett in the 9 Camaro, but as we mentioned, Peter Brock is back out. Of course, his chances have been diminished to the point where they're almost zero, but we'll keep an eye now on the action for the remainder of the front runners in the pit area.
There's one thing we lose sight of here. Brock's had a pit stop and he's fueled and retired his car, so he won't be in again. So the situation may not be quite as bad as it seems, and I can assure you Peter will soldier on to the finish.
Indeed. The stop was deep enough into the race where he does take on enough fuel to be certain of finishing. He won't have to worry about driving economically. He can drive as hard as he likes, and he's out there doing just that at the moment. In the meantime, his teammate, Johnny Harvey and Alan Moffat, are still continuing their dice for second spot, very close behind Alan Grice. A gap of 2.2 seconds is the margin between the leading car and the second car, and this is the third man we're looking at the moment, Alan Moffat. A man who's won Bathurst 4 times, made his great reputation here with Ford cars. A couple of years ago switched to Mazda. People thought that it was a strange decision at the time, possibly, but he's certainly justified it. He's got the car through to where he's won a number of major races this year and would deserve to start Bathurst as certainly one of the outright favourites. There are the gaps. You can see how close those leading cars are. There's not much between any of them. Dick Johnson still well in contention in 4th spot.
So I think Johnson may have elected to just ease off that frantic pace for a while.
Well, here comes Johnson now. He was caught up badly in traffic for a while. Sorry, that's John French's car. It was Johnson's old car. It looks exactly the same except for the number. John had a bit of an accident in practice, rebuilt the car okay. He will be Dick Johnson's co-driver at Bathurst, and that's the car that Dick did use last year to win the National Touring Car Series. He's about to be lapped. John Harvey and Alan Moffat right on his tail will pull out within a lap or so and go by John French, the veteran Queensland driver. I gave John a drive in the BMC team in the days when I was involved then, and he was an old bloke there. So he's been driving for a long time. Probably an underrated, overlooked driver, John French. Been around for a long time, and drivers who've been around for a long time without maybe winning all the major races tend to be bypassed. But I know that Dick Johnson reckons he's the finest co-driver in the business. and he's certainly one of the aggressive ones, and yet one of the safe ones. There he is, just trying to wheedle his way through, and yet very courteously providing room for John Harvey to get through. He's got Alan Moffat about to try and come and pass him as well, and he'll give him room as well. That's him right in the middle of that rather aggressive sandwich. In the blue car, John French, Alan Moffat behind him. Alan Moffat may not have the legs to pass him on the straight, but he will certainly get by him under brakes at the end of the straight. We'll see. There's a lot of traffic, very dicey passing there. They go by the Mitsubishi Colt, one of the small cars under 1600 cc's. There goes Alan Moffat. Well, he's got a lot of power. He can do that to a Falcon V8. Bear in mind, that's the car that won Bathurst last year, and here's a man that hopes to win it this year. He'll be driving with him. That's Dick Johnson, who's ahead of his co-driver for Bathurst, John French. A lot of traffic there. Pretty desperate motoring for the drivers of these fast cars, trying to wheedle their way through all the heavy traffic. Look at Alan Moffat there, just clinging to the tail of the Commodore of what's his name, John French. Not as John French, no.
Sorry, Evan, I was
who's the number 2 driver in the Marlborough Holder team? His first name is John, his second name is Harvey, and I can't think of it. That's who it is. Oh boy, John French then. The Queenslander, been around for a long time. A man with a marvellous sense of humour.
And Peter Brock back lapping at 1 minute 13.2 seconds. So whatever that problem was, it seemingly has been solved.
You've no doubt heard Frenchie's classic statement, Evan, about some have got skill, some have got luck, some have got money, but I've just got skill.
Well, they'll be required to call on all of that today. There we have, and we were talking about earlier, John French. The race still settling down, 27 laps completed.
A lucky guess on my part.
Right, the message from Peter Brock is that the gearbox extension seal is replaced. Everything is now okay, so he doesn't have a problem anymore, and that's good news. But whether he can make up that 7 minutes 20 seconds loss in the pits is another matter, but it is his pit stop over. He won't have to worry about going to the pits.
We really haven't, we couldn't refill the gearbox with oil. So I'm running it down a fair bit, so I'll take a bit of a punt.
And look how close is the battle for the lead. Alan Grice in car 4, Johnny Harvey in car 25, nose to tail. One of the turbocharged Bluebirds right in front. Fred Gibson and George Fury driving these cars in the race today.
Harvey's just moving into the lead, I think.
I'm trying to see Alan Grice. I lost track of him in car number 4. It was a nose-to-tail battle a little while ago. There's Peter Brock going through Repco down pit straight. A number of the cars a little hard to distinguish, 05 and 25. The way to tell Peter Brock's car 05 from John Harvey's 25 is that John Harvey's car is a whiter colour scheme, has more white on it, not quite the same intensity of red. Into the pits, one of the smaller cars in the other categories, number 46 is Larry Cogg in the Mazda RX-3, running in the 2001 to 3 litre class. Peter Brock out on the circuit, coming through the S's.
Welcome back to Sandown. Peter Brock back on the track, and we may be shortly able to have a word to him on the lap number 29, car number 4. The Alan Brown, Alan Grice, Holden Commodore still in the lead.
And with Peter Brock coming down the straight, we'll talk to him now. Just to repeat, please, Peter, your problems, are they in fact solved?
The gearbox extension housing bolt fell out, and oil from the gearbox was floating around. When we got there, we had to wash everything down to see exactly what was the matter, and they put a bolt in there, and away we're going.
Right.
Oh, that's good news, because if it was a seal had popped out, there was every chance it could pop out again. If it was a bolt and they fixed it, I think Peter, as we said before, will just be able to truck on to the end now.
They wouldn't have been able to put oil in, probably, John. Would that be a problem?
No, they could have put it in. They did take a drum to it, so I would assume they did.
Great battle going on in other parts of the track, going through the S's at the moment. There's quite some dicing as we follow Peter Brock, but
the big scrap, of course, is between John Harvey and Alan Moffat. It's been raging for a few laps. There's Brock going through. We'll pick up on the race leaders again shortly for you.
He's about to unlap himself, or once anyhow, as far as Dick Johnson is concerned. Johnson just in front of him and running in 4th place. Alan Grice leading in 4 from John Harvey in 25, from Alan Moffat in 43.
Race leader Alan Grice coming to the end of the front straightaway at Sandown.
In 2nd place now is Alan Moffat, who has opened quite a lead over John Harvey. This is down the main straight. Peter McLeod from Mazda RX-7. Let's go through. John French with Peter Brock right behind him. He has got by Dick Johnson, who is now maybe 100 metres behind Brock.
On their lap times, Evan, just checked Alan Grice's lap time. He's doing 13.8. Peter's doing 13.2. So unless something untoward happens to Alan, he's looking pretty good at the moment.
Dick Johnson, he was just passed with some ease by Peter Brock, which suggests that the Commodores have the leads on the Falcon at the moment, because there's no doubt that this is the quick one. Dick Johnson's car.
Alan Grice still leading. Alan Moffat holding down 2nd, but not quite content about that. Wanting to change that is John Harvey in the 2nd of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores, number 25. Interesting, in the early part of the race, it took but 3 laps for the first 2 cars, or the first number of cars, to be lapped by the V8s. Now we've got Alan Moffat bidding for the lead at the end of the front straight. We're going to have a challenge for the lead.
They're coming right towards you now. Number 4. Our race leader goes through there. A car sandwiched in between, but the next car you'll see will be Moffat, and that's the 2nd car as he goes through. He's really got the leader in his sights. There he is, passing on the inside. Some pretty desperate stuff there. Gets right behind Alan Grice. That's how close they are. Ricard is Alan Grice. Peter Stuyvesant is Alan Moffat. And the Commodore pulls away. It has the extra torque, the pulling power out of the corners. He opens up a lead, but Moffat goes very fast in terms of ultimate speed, and in a lighter car really can brake very, very late. Let's see if he can make up ground as they come over the top of Rothman's Rise and through the S's. That's Moffat going hard as he tries to pick up the leader, Alan Grice. No great friends, this pair. They have great respect for each other, but neither man would like the other being in front. And Moffat has closed right up behind Alan Grice. If he can just provoke Grice into driving desperately hard, wearing out his rubber, using up his fuel, he knows he'll have to take the Commodore in for a fuel stop, and Alan hopes he can go through. But as he told me in that interview you heard earlier, he himself has to be very careful. He is driving the car right up to the danger limit, right up to the limit of its endurance, so he can't go too hard, but he can brake hard, and that's what he's going to do, and he'll go into the lead. And Alan Moffat on lap 33 of the Castrol 400 takes the lead, and it's Alan Grice in 2nd spot and trying to do something about getting back that lead, and he'll have a go as they come up the straight around Arco, and now Grice will put his foot down and have a go at the RX-7. Can he do it? Oh, there's a spin there. You can see that's John Harvey. Oh, John Harvey's been taken out. I hope those marshals are slowing the traffic because they're completely blocked off there. Harvey was taken wide by the Mazda that went out there, took him with it. A lot of traffic is going to get by. Peter Brock goes. A desperate position as Peter Brock wondering what's happened. All that John Harvey needs is a clear spot in the traffic, but everyone's going by and he can't get the clear space to reverse out and get back into the race. He's waiting now. The master's saying, hang on, hang on, hang on. Now go, go, go. And Harvey can't make a go. They're pushing the other car up. These two will hit if they're not careful. They're side by side.
Actually backing into each other, I think, Evan.
They're at an angle, but he's clear now. The other car got itself out of the position, and now Harves, the innocent victim in that, has lost a lot of ground. Let's look at it again. You'll see what happens. We see Moffat go through first. Now Harvey is very close. Watch, a car comes wide behind. First of all, the Ricard car. Now watch this. He's gone, you see. The Gemini is. Car number 78, and Harvey can do nothing but throw it around to try and save it. Magnificent driving by Harvey to avoid that, but it cost him a lot of time. A tinkle of broken glass. He just touched with the front. No mortal damage though, but he lost half a lap trying to get the space just to reverse out and get on with the race. And now John Harvey's back a long way. Alan Moffat having just left the V12 Jaguar of John Goss. That shows you the performance of these peripheral port rotary Mazdas when they can pass an XJS Jaguar developed for racing. That's how quickly they're going. That's the form of the race leader, Alan Moffat. For a space to reverse out and get on with the race.
Moffat immediately opening a gap on Alan Grice, 4.2 seconds, 20 seconds. Then back to Dick Johnson, number 17. And John Harvey back a few more spots behind them after that unfortunate tangle on the exit to Arco corner. Here's Moffat again, caught in amongst the traffic. But didn't leave much room there either when he went around the outside.
Bobby Morris circulating quite well in car number 7. He's now making up ground. He has risen to 5th place in the field. He's got ahead of he was ahead of John Harvey, who just retook 5th position from him. So in 6th place is Bob Morris, who's just coming down towards Arco corner now. And a driver we haven't seen in the race, but will follow as the Castrol 400 progresses. Alan Moffat in pit straight. The real problem for him must be the traffic. He's seen what's happened to John Harvey. He knows it's a hazard with other cars being passed. Drivers involved in their own private battles with class cars, with cars that don't have the same levels of performance, and often, of course, with drivers that don't have the same levels of skill, and it's difficult for both parties. Cars below 1.6 litres, mixing it with big 5-litre V8s. It's a mixed bag of racing cars, 40 of them out there at the moment. Alan Moffat leading now by 5.6 seconds from Alan Grice. So it's Mazda leading Commodore. In 3rd place, 19.8 seconds back, it's Dick Johnson in the Falcon, car number 17, in front of Gary Rogers in Commodore, in front of John Harvey trying to fight his way back up through the field. And then Bob Morris in the new Seiko watches, Channel 7. Ford Falcon giving it its first run in Victoria after his first up win at Oran Park in the Perrier Gold Cup just a couple of weeks ago. George Fury running next in the leaderboard in the turbocharged Nissan Bluebird. That's a good result for him. And car number 11, Charlie O'Brien, making it to the leaderboard for the first time in his Commodore. And then making up the top 10, it's Alan Jones, former world champion, running in the rotary Mazda, putting a second rotary up among the top 10. There's Dick Johnson. Don't discount him. He might be a matter of 24, 25 seconds behind the leader, but that might count for much by the end of the race. There are pit stops to happen, there's traffic to negotiate, there's the possibility of all sorts of things going wrong with cars. Johnson, you see, just giving the lights a bit of a wink to let the drivers in front know that he wants to get by, just in case they haven't seen him. It's a dark car, maybe not quite as easy to spot as some of the lighter machines, so he gives a little flash on the lights. Partly a nervous mannerism as much as anything to let them know that he's there, just to make sure they don't get in the way. Pete Gagan in his days of racing used to permanently set the winkers so they flashed all the time.
Grice seems to be slowing him rather than...
Welcome back to Sandown, our race leader after that 37. It is still Alan Moffat by 5.5 seconds to car number 4, which is Alan Grice, and in 3rd place is car number 17, Dick Johnson in the Palmer Tube Mills Ford Falcon. In 4th place, car number 16, Gary Rogers, and in 5th place, it's the Marlboro Holden dealer team car of John Harvey. Of course, being surrounded by cars, all vying for positions is not the ideal situation to be in. A lot of traffic out there, so I just wonder how Queenslander Dick Johnson would get himself out of such a predicament.
What I try to do is I just try to ignore them and hope like hell they'll go away, because it is very distracting sometimes to have mirrors all around you, so you're looking more in the mirror than you are as to what you're actually going or where you're trying to place the car. So I possibly get the mirror and I'll just screw it down so I can't see at all and just drive my own race as if nobody was there, and that's the only way you can really attack these sort of races, because if you leave, you can't leave gaps naturally, but if you drive close lines and things like that, I don't think there's a problem.
In other words, Evan Green, you shut your eyes to the problem.
It sounds a bit like that. It's a marvellous philosophy. I think you want to have the skills of a Dick Johnson to make that sort of philosophy pay off, though. He just pushes the mirror out of the way and gets on with the job. Well, Dick Johnson getting on with the job. He's in 3rd place. That's not a bad position. He is 26.5 seconds behind the leader, Alan Moffat. And he wouldn't be too unhappy. He'd rather be leading the race, of course. But he'll just stroke the car along and see how it goes. Keep it happy, make sure it doesn't wear the tyres out, keep an eye on the gauges, and to see how he goes. He's got a lot of time still to go. It's a long race, 110 laps, and they still have something like 70 laps to go.
Driver who has been making up some ground is Alan Jones in the number 27 Mazda RX-7. Was in the top 10 a while back, starting to put a little pressure now on one of the Nissan Turbos, and also Bob Morris in the number 7 car. We'll pick up that for you a little later. Johnson round for another of the circuits. 39 of 110 have been completed. Murray Carter in the John Sands entry. The Ford is in the pit area. Bonnet up. Obviously, Gary Wilkinson will be quickly on the scene down there.
Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, second pit stop in a very short space of time for the Ford veteran, Murray Carter. Just going to move in here and try and get a word with him. Murray, what seems to be the problem?
We've developed an oil leak and smoking fairly badly, so we just want to make sure that nothing is going to develop. The car itself performing all right, apart from just the smoke screen that comes out of it. Getting inside here, and we thought we'd make a stop, fuel the tyres, and hope we can cure the oil leak and we won't need to stop again.
So you'll keep going even if you might be a little off the pace?
Well, yes, we want to do some. We can do some development on the car, and this gives us the opportunity to do some development while at least we're running around.
Okay, thank you very much. Murray Carter, one of the great veterans of Australian motor racing and one of the great stalwarts of touring car racing, and you can bet your life that he'll put in his homework here today, and he'll be one of the stayers when it gets to Mount Panorama in 3 weeks' time. Back to you, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much, Gary.
We're watching Alan Moffat at the moment. Another great race we'll follow in a few moments is between the 6th and 10th cars coming towards Dunlop Bridge in just a few moments. There's really an enormous battle going on there, which we'll describe when we pick up car 7. Bob Morrison, George Fury, Charlie O'Brien, Alan Jones, Terry Shield. They're locked together, only 2 seconds, separating 6th and 10th places. They're having themselves an enormous scrap.
Moffat threading his way through some of the cars and also still being able to increase that lead that he holds at the present time.
The battle we're talking about is just passing beneath us now as they swing around up pit straight. Here they come. Bob Morris in car 7. George Fury in car 55. Charlie O'Brien in car 11. Alan Jones in 27. Terry Shield in 37. That's Bob Morris in car 7. It's real stacks on the mill stuff. They're confused by the fact that they're also lapping some of the slower cars. But Alan Jones has been making good progress in number 27, the RX-7 Rotary. There's Bobby Morisseau giving the second outing for the George Fury built car. There he's passing Alan Jones now. There's the difference in sheer grunt out of the corner. There's the difference in braking. Alan Jones says, hey, cut it out. I'd rather be first into the corners. Charlie O'Brien, car number 11.
Alan, of course, had the choice of which car he wanted to run in the endurance races, whether it be the Mazda or the Ford. And I think we've had a prang down on the exit from Repco, and we have one of the Commodores that's obviously in some problem there, has caught up the front. Caught up the front wheel. We'll catch some numbers for you. Yes, it's the number 13 car.
David Parsons, the young driver who'll be driving with Peter Jansen. As you can see, he's not getting much steering effect from the front of the car, but he does have the sense to get the car away from the corner. Let's take it all again. Just see what happens. This is David Parsons. There's been a real tangle there. You can see cars everywhere.
How lucky was Peter Jansen, who went right through the middle of the gap.
Well, he saw his own car being pushed across, mortally damaged. Larry Koch was the other one, number 46, who went wide there and suffered fairly severe damage to his car as well. That's the Mazda RX-3. David Parsons and Larry Koch both out. A third car involved. Peter Jansen just skipped by. Bobby Morris still in that scrap for 6th place, where he has three contenders, and he is trying desperately hard. You can see the way that Charlie O'Brien was throwing the wheels up on the corner there. Terry Shield following through behind in 37. Alan Jones will be coming through behind in 27. And Bob Morris behind him. And watching it all, George Fury in car 55, the Turbo Bluebird.
The two that have been scrapping probably for the last 10 laps or so, Alan Jones and Terry Shield, they've been going to it, chasing and repassing one another. Bob Morris was ahead of them for some time. However, the two Masters were able to take Morris and then start off their own dice. It's Jones this time trying to get past.
There's oil on the track. That red and yellow flag indicates there's oil. I think the man's taking a guess. It may or may not be. There's certainly debris there as car 38 comes into the pits. The South Australian driver, probably the only South Australian with a real outright chance, Stack, in number 38. It's the former Alan Grice car. And 38 Bernie Stack bringing his car into the pits. Bad luck for the Adelaide driver. In the meantime, Bob Morris with George Fury in hot pursuit there. Bob has been passed by both Alan Jones, Terry Shield, and has dropped back behind Charlie O'Brien in car number 11. Bob is trying very hard, using all the track and a bit more occasionally to throw the big Falcon around. It's only his second race, and it's real credit to himself and George Shepherd, who prepared the car, that this Falcon is so competitive so early in its racing career. Terry Shield giving Charlie O'Brien a bad time. That's Alan Jones just going beneath the camera on Dunlop Bridge. And then it's the Turbo Bluebird in hot pursuit of Bobby Morris's Falcon. Bob Morris, a member of the Alan Jones racing team. 3 cars, Falcon, Mazda, and the single-seat Rolf RT4.
Current race leader is still Alan Moffat, 8.6 seconds to the good of car number 4. It's Alan Grice. The Peter Brock fans, Peter earlier spent 7 minutes and 20 seconds in the pits with oil leak problems, but he is still 6 laps off the pace. The problem, as Peter told us, live from the car, has been rectified, but he has little chance of success in today's event. But as John Shepherd pointed out, he will still be going at the finish.
And he's made his pit stop, which could count. Yeah, that is in his favour, but he has an enormous job in front and almost certainly can't win. George Fury, the amazing George Fury, former Australian rally champion, a bespeckled man. It looks like a slightly shrunken version of Superman before he gets changed into his fancy cloaks. He's got the glasses, he has the mild look. He lives up to his name when he drives in rallies. I've driven against him often. George Fury, a great rally driver, decided to make the move to racing driving. Howard Marsden, the manager of the Nissan team, thought he had the potential and has certainly been proved right. John Harvey, by the way, is now giving Gary Rogers a bad time for 4th place. So Harvey has made up a lot of ground after being pushed out on this corner. We're about to see Arco, and he has just gone through the roof of the car, flashed through Arco corner as he sets off in pursuit of
another one.
Peter McLeod has gone in nose first into the corner.
And the last time past the tower, Alan Moffat's Mazda was backfiring very badly as it came past our commentary position. And we might pick that up for you. Moffat will be on his way towards the back straight area now, but it didn't sound very healthy, and he's got the indicator on. So Alan Moffat, a dramatic moment in the Castrol, 400 from Sandown Park, race leader with a big build-up.
And after 45 laps, then he's lost his lead. He's being passed by cars. He's speeding up again now, but he was flashing the lights, so whatever it is, it doesn't affect his top speed performance, but he had some problem. Maybe it's cured itself. Maybe he's just going quickly where he can. But he certainly was going so slowly that he would have lost the lead to Alan Grice.
Back at Sandown, our race leader, Alan Moffat, seemingly with a few engine problems. He still is leading Alan Grice in car 4. It'll be interesting to see what Moffat will do in the next lap or so.
John Craft is in the pits. The pit's getting very busy there, and we may see Alan Moffat go in. He was certainly flashing the lights to indicate he intended to call in the pits. As much as anything, a signal to his own crew. We're watching him now as he goes down the straight. Will he elect to take the pit road? I don't think so. He's back in business. Whatever it was may have cured itself. He may have just had some temporary problem. Certainly he was slowing down. Certainly he signaled he was coming into the pits, but he's changed his mind. He's out there and going seemingly as hard as ever. Maybe he's just seeing whether it sorts itself out.
His lead has been reduced to 9.4 seconds from Grice.
We might ask Gary Wilkinson in the pits if he could slip along to Alan Moffat's pits to see if they've got a radio message from their man to indicate what the trouble might have been.
Certainly the car wasn't missing as it went past here last time.
It's Gary, Mike. Bobby Morris is in the pits.
Right. Bob Morris is in the pits. We're watching Alan Moffat.
Michael, it's Gary. Bobby Morris is in the pits.
Yes, we have that information, Gary. Thanks very much. You might like to update us and let us know of the problems associated or whether it's a routine pit stop.
We're watching Alan Moffat out on the track. He's on the tail of George Fury. I think it's George. There are 2 of these Turbo Bluebirds. The other one driven by Freddie Gibson, who won Bathurst back in 1967 and launched the V8 era. Let's just watch as we see. Oh, yes. That's Greg Hansford in car 42.
Stack, I think it was, the South Australian it may have been.
Stephen Harrington, I think, the young
Here's Alan Moffat going into the pit area now, so stand by Gary Wilkinson. Here comes Alan Moffat. I would think a very unusual pit stop.
Well, bad lap for the Masters. The 2 teammates striking trouble both on lap 47.
Well, Alan Moffat has just come into the pits.
Tilting up when you got a chance.
You can see that he is definitely smoking, and there's obviously something slightly amiss with the car. You can see churns of fuel, 2 churns of fuel going in. Just what exactly is wrong, if anything, with Moffat's car remains to be seen. The crew working frantically here. 2 churns of fuel in, and that's all he's done.
Well, he's run into a problem there with one of the other cars that had slowed down. Whether or not Moffat will have to find out, elected to run a very small fuel load and then be able to sprint with the V8s.
Doing a Brabham BMW Formula 1 trick. I doubt whether he would, but goodness knows why he went in and did nothing but that. He may just have wanted to have talked to his pit. Obviously, he was in some doubt. Oh, there's Bobby Morris's car. So it was heading towards the pits, and he tried to get out, couldn't make it. Moffat, by the way, is third now after that stop. He was 20 seconds in the pits, but lost of time, of course, slowing down. And there's Greg Hansford, who's the motorcycle ace, who has changed to 4 wheels. He's taken a most unusual line there.
It's the steeplechase course, I think, Evan.
Yes, well, he's had to hurdle a few obstacles after Stack spun in front of him. He can't find an exit. That's the problem. He got caught up in there. Now he'll have to go back the same way to get out and try and work his way back to the pit area.
There's only one way to get around, and that's on the black stuff, I'm afraid. You won't get there on the grass.
No. Okay, Alan Grice, let's update the race. We get the Castrol 400 from Sandown Park after lap 48. Alan Grice in number 4. Gricey from Sydney in the Recar Commodore establishes a 25-second lead over Queensland's Dick Johnson in the Tru-Blue Ford. And
the last pit down there, which is Moffat's pit, all the gear was laying across the track, and he ran over something, but it jammed up, and he can't get any gears. Just couldn't jam it in gear straight away.
Something's jammed up under the car.
We think so. We're going to go and have a look.
It's put him effectively out of the race then?
Well, you know, he just had the gearbox just jammed solid just after he ran over the gear lane down there on the track.
It's very, very congested in this pit lane here, isn't it?
Yeah.
You could say that.
Well, I think that sums it up. But yes, that is, you're quite right. It's so congested that cars really can't get by each other, especially as you can see right now. Dick Johnson, there's a pit stop going on right here. Dick has come in. And you can see by the way that the guys are working on the right side of the car. Tires, and see how the jacks and the equipment they're using extends out across the pit lane. Now, it is impossible if another car wants to get past there to do so without collecting the hardware. And that's exactly what happened to Bobby Morris when he tried to get out of pit lane. Something, he's run over it and it's jammed up under the car and he's lost all his gears. And for the Seiko 7 Network Falcon and Bobby Morris, the race is run. They've pushed the car to the back of the pits. But there's a very quick pit stop. Dick Johnson, he was in and out in about the space of 35 seconds. Fuel and right side tyres. Now Peter Brock has come in again. We've already sent him in for that very lengthy pit stop earlier where he had a gearbox leak which almost caused a fire under the front of the car. It took them quite some time to rectify that and effectively put him right off the pace in the race. And now obviously there's some further problem and you can see members of the pit team under the car.
If I could just interrupt too, Gary.
I don't see what exactly. I can't hear you.
I got Alan Jones, I think, is in trouble as well. Car 27.
Is that well?
He may be coming into the pits. He's going very slowly. Looks oh, Peter Brock is going to the back of the pits.
Yes, here he is. Alan Jones is also in the pits, as you observed, Devon, and we'll make our way up towards his position to see if we can ascertain just what the problem is. It hasn't been a very it's been a very eventful day so far for the Seiko 7 Network team. We've seen Bobby Morris out of the race, and now Alan Jones, obviously, there doesn't seem to be a lot of activity going on. I don't know what the problem is. Hello, looks like gear problems. You can see here inside the car, as our camera moves in, that there is some problem with the gear change lever inside the car. Now, what that problem is, Barry Jones, of course, who developed this car, is now here observing as well, walking around to the passenger side, trying to work out what exactly is wrong. I don't know that we'll try and get in to talk to Alan at this moment. We'll just have a look here and see what transpires. He obviously is very, very disappointed. You can see now Barry Jones with his head in the car, the gear lever unresponsive, checking under the car as well. Alan Jones signalling to members of the pit to lift the bonnet. Let's get under there. Let's get under the front of the car as well. And really, they they're having great difficulty trying to work out just what the problem is now. Whether or not the gear lever itself is seized up, I'm not quite sure. We'll have to wait and try and get a word with Barry Jones as soon as they've got this done. Now the car's being jacked up as well, as you can see. They're bringing the jacks around to this right side of the car. They probably will take the opportunity, assuming that they can get the other problem sorted out, to change tyres. As you can see, yes, there's a new right front tyre coming out and a right rear as well. No fuel being taken on at this stage. Alan Jones, Barry Jones, in very earnest conversation, still trying to sort out that problem. And by gee, it's been a race of incident for a race that, as we mentioned earlier, had been cut to 341 kilometres and might see fewer pit stops. We've had twice as many as we would have perhaps in a normal 400-kilometre race. Tyre change going on now. Jones and Jones working frantically. They could almost have a party in the cockpit of that Mazda. There are so many people in there at the moment. They can't work it out because it's quite difficult to communicate too in these circumstances. The noise is horrendous in this situation. The tyres have been changed. They're still making a frantic attempt. Jones is waving his hand. Third gear, he's indicating he's having trouble with third gear. Apparently that's the one that he can't get, second and third. I'm only going on guesswork here. I've got no idea exactly what he's saying to the pit crew. We will try and find out as soon as it's opportune.
We have a couple of cars abandoned on the circuit, by the way, Gary. Greg Hansford has finally pulled up and abandoned his car, the Mazda 42, and Bernie Stack, car 38, a Commodore, alongside him. Quite separate incidents, but they're both pulled out on the far side of the track. And in the meantime, we're watching the leader, car number 4, Alan Grice, wondering where all the opposition has gone to. In fact, the leaderboard now shows it's in second place once again is Alan Moffat. He's 23.8 seconds behind, but he's back in second place because so much is happening to the leading cars. And then in third place, John Harvey in car number 25. He's about 19 or 20 seconds behind Alan Moffat. Then it's car 16, which is Gary Rogers, then Vic Johnson, who of course was slowed by the pit stop. And then Terry Shield, that's the next man, and then Charlie O'Brien in car 11, George Fury in car 55. There they are on your screen. That's the order of the race at the moment, and you can see the gaps between the drivers. Charlie O'Brien, the man we're watching through in car 11 as he goes through Repco, up towards Arco and past the pit straight in the pit area where so much has been happening in these early laps of the Castrol 400. Gary Wilson, what's happening now?
Let's see if we can... Okay, let's see if we can ascertain exactly what the problem has been here with the Mazda. I noticed that there's a lot of frantic activity going on with the gear lever. What's the problem?
He lost first gear initially, and now he's lost 3 and stuck in third.
He's stuck in third, and he's lost, what, first, second and fourth?
Yeah.
Which makes it impossible. I mean, absolutely impossible. Is it? You don't know what the cause of it is?
No.
Well, you can see that they're still working to try and rectify it, and Alan obviously is really getting quite agitated because it's a bitter blow. The car was running so smoothly up to this point, and with the rate of attrition among the other front runners in the race, he could have been smiling to himself in another half hour or so, because that's the way the race is being run at the present time. A couple of the cars that have managed to sit back in the field look like they might have the last shot. We've seen Bobby Morris out of the race. We've seen Alan Jones here effectively non-competitive from here on, even if they managed to get this gearbox fixed. Well, I'll hang on here and see what happens, but there's not much point in us hanging on. I'll go back to you, Evan, and pick up the action in the race.
Right. It's an amazing coincidence, though, Gary, that both of the Channel 7 Seiko cars are out with gearbox troubles or gear selection troubles. Bobby Morris, through running over a jack or some piece of equipment which jammed the car in gear, and Alan Jones, who just can't get the car out of third gear. Extraordinary, almost at the same time in the race. Both cars halted by that same unusual problem. Well, Alan Grice, though, going round as though his life was charmed. 22.8 seconds is the margin. He can afford to take it a bit easy at the moment as he goes past Murray Carter's.
And the race just now halfway through, Evan. Well, the gap was up to 25 seconds, Grice over Moffat. At the moment, it's down to 22.8. So I would suggest with the reliability factor of Moffat's car and the fact he's already pitted and the likelihood of Grice having to pit, that Grice would be well advised to try and get big a lead as he possibly can.
A lot of traffic in front of the race leader. Paul Owen is a car he has to pass in car 44, the Mazda. And look at that line of traffic. 2 Dantons going through, George Fury and Freddie Gibson, then the BMW. Jim Richards, the left-hand drive model, probably the prettiest looking car in the circuit, but the one going quickest and without any trouble at the moment is the Recar Commodore, driven by Alan Grice.
Grice, who has been fairly unlucky in a number of the major events, out there in front and leading it quite nicely. The ever-present Alan Moffat in the Peter Stuyvesant Mazda RX-7. In second place, we'll check the gap for you in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds. 22.5 seconds, then back to number 25, John Harvey. And the gap between Alan Grice and Alan Moffat coming down almost at each lap. 21.2 seconds now.
Well, if Moffat can only be 21 seconds behind, having made the pit stop and slowed down, it just indicates the grip he may have on this race, as long as his problems are truly behind him. Alan Grice has had no troubles. He may be able to go faster. He's certainly in control of the race, and he'll be very dependent on his pit signals, just to let him know what's going on. You know, he can only manage to drive in the most correct fashion if he gets absolutely precise information from the pits. John Shepherd, for years you managed the Marlborough Holden dealer team. What sort of information would the pit crew be giving him at this stage to say you're in front, take it easy, or what information would they be passing on?
I would doubt very much, Evan, if they would be having a lot to say. Basically, when you're in a long-distance race like this, you leave it up to the driver to use his loaf and not do stupid things and not wear the car out, because, in fact, he can't convey all the information to you, and you could be giving him signals from the pits based on erroneous information or guesswork on your part, so really, it's up to the driver.
We're on lap 57 of the Castrol 400. Still our race leader is car number 4, Alan Grice. 20.8 seconds to Alan Moffat. Car number 43 in second place, and in third place, the Marlborough Holden dealer team entrant, car number 25, John Harvey, some 23.5 seconds further back.
Have shades of Oran Park again.
Well, you know, we're under the same sort of plan. We were coasting along and letting everybody fall out who's going to fall out and keep the car nice and fresh for a challenge towards the end.
Bob, we did anticipate before the race started that there might be a lot fewer pit stops than we're used to seeing in this race, but as it's turned out, there's been an enormous amount of action and a high attrition rate.
Well, I think the pace has been on at the front, and the tyre wear has been pretty tremendous, and of course, when you're into it, you're using the horsepower, and that uses fuel. A lot of it is safety, trying to check their tyres, because it's very slippery out there, and it does give the impression that the tyres are wearing more than they are.
Well, out there at the moment, Grice, Johnson, Moffat look to be the three that are possibly going to fight the situation out. You've seen the three of them out there while you've been on the track. Have you got an opinion?
Well, I think that Moffat's in the box seat because he had a very fast pit stop, and Grice has yet to stop.
Okay, Bobby Morris, thanks very much. Back to Evan Green.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure that the second most upset man here when he hears the full story will be Alan Moffat. Alan will be really annoyed that his own pit crew has been responsible in some way. Accidentally, of course. There is no person who plays the game harder than Alan Moffat, but there's no person who plays it with more of the courtesy that's involved in motor racing than Moffat. He will be furious that something was left there. It certainly wouldn't have been his intention, and he will be, I would say, as deeply upset by that incident as Bobby Morris has been, because there's no fairer man than Alan Moffat in motor racing. But he may have the race in his bag. As Bobby Morris was saying, he now is in the box seat because he's running in second spot. He's made his pit stop. Alan Grice still has to do that, and the car hopefully is still running well. It looks good.
John Harvey noticeably dropping back to the gap between second and third has lengthened about 3 or 4 seconds in the last few laps, and we can see coming into the pits, car number 16, Gary Rogers.
Gary Rogers has been doing very well in this race. He's now handing over Ron Wanless, the former Speedway driver. But Gary put the car up in a very competitive position. They've been running up in the top group all the time. They're now in 4th place. They're in for their pit stop, and is over once again to Gary Wilkinson.
Evan, this car seems to be running beautifully. It did run fantastically in qualifying, as we know, with Gary Rogers doing a 1:12.7, and he's been keeping right behind the pace right throughout this race so far, with seemingly without too much difficulty. Now, Ron Wanless strapped in, Gary Rogers out of the car, and they're set to go. It's been a very quick pit stop indeed, about 40 seconds at the moment, 45 seconds. They've taken on fuel, they've taken on tyres. Ron Wanless is on his way out. I'm going to try and grab Gary Rogers while we have the opportunity, fresh out of the car. He can tell us a little bit more about what's been going on out on the track. Gary Rogers fresh out of the second of the three-car Commodores. And Gary, whilst you haven't been perhaps mixing it with the front 2 or 3, you've been sitting right in behind the pace, and the car seems to be going very, very well.
Actually, Gary, the car's going bloody awful, I hate to say. Right. We've got the most severe understeer problem. I can't believe it. Yesterday, perfect. We've done absolutely nothing except put a set of tyres on and you cannot drive it. It is absolutely undrivable.
But then how have you managed to keep into the position that you're in?
Well, we're 3 seconds a lap slower than we were yesterday, and I honestly believe that I could have gone quicker yesterday anyway.
Well, you can't explain why that's happened.
Well, all we've done is put a set of tyres on, the same as we used yesterday. Whether there's something wrong with the tyres or not, I don't know, but you cannot drive the car. It just understeers off every corner. Fast, slow, it doesn't matter.
Well, I just hope that Ron can handle it out there.
Well, I certainly hope he can too.
OK, Evan, all yours.
Thank you very much. That's an enormous load on Ron Wadless, and not as experienced a driver as Gary Rogers, John Shepherd. It's very hard for a man taking over to have to cope with a car which has a handling problem which wasn't there before.
Yes, it'll be a matter of, I guess Gary would have told him anyway, but it'll be a pretty sad old thing to find that out of the first corner he arrived at, that it wasn't steering very well.
Understeering, by the way, is the tendency for the front of the car not to want to turn, but to run off. It has to be the tyres. If they've done nothing else except change tyres, there's got to be something wrong with the compound or whatever it might be.
Certainly sounds that way, Evan. I heard a definition about understeer and oversteer. Understeer is you see what you're going to hit. Oversteer is you don't.
Jim Richards, by the way, going into the pits in car 31, the black BMW. Gary will see him in just a moment. There's Alan Moffat, still circulating well. There's the BMW. The nicest looking car on the track at the moment. A little heavy, doesn't quite have the same engine size as some of the V8s, and endurance racing is its forte. It needs a 24-hour race as well to really shine, but isn't that a gloriously finished car?
15.2 seconds now the gap between Alan Grice in the lead and Alan Moffat catching up all the time. 62 laps have been completed of 110 in the Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. The order still is Grice over Moffat, and John Harvey dropping back 32.5 seconds behind Alan Moffat in number 43.
Terry Shield working his way up, a driver we haven't seen a great deal of in 37, the second of the RX-7s. A man who scored a great win at Amaroo Park 2 meetings ago, and in fact now is the holder of the lap record there, so that's how quickly Terry Shield can go. Alan Moffat in the meantime, coming up behind, is it Peter Jansen? It looks like it in the Schweppes car. Number 3 should be the Merry Madcap of Motorsport. Peter Jansen had an early pit stop. Here's John French coming into the pits again. The car that Dick Johnson drove at Bathurst last year and won the race. He'll be handing over to his co-driver Alf Grant, who actually is the owner of the car now. It was sold to Grant. You may have noticed, by the way, what appeared to be flame at the front of the Gary Rogers car. The cameraman was perceptive enough to zoom right in on a sparkle and a flash of fire in the front wheel of the car. It's just, that's how hot the brakes get. And it was just signs of fire there. It made no problem, of course. They started to move before it could happen. But the driver has to be very careful when he comes into the pits, John Shepherd, but he doesn't put the brakes on, or he can, in fact, weld the pads to the disc. Yeah, there's a couple of things happen, Evan. That's one of them, as you say. If he comes in and brakes very hard while the car is sitting there, it will weld the pads on. The second thing that happens, and it's more than likely what happened in that case, when the car stops, the rubber that's hooked up in the wheels falls down on top of the disc and starts burning on the disc. It doesn't cause any harm, as you say, but it's a bit alarming when you see these flames in there. John French's car with Alf Grant just getting behind the wheel. Johnny French stalking away, the red helmet, the blue figure. Plenty of smoke. Been typical of all these stops. That's the Terry Shield car, the RX-7, which is now up into 5th position. He's just behind the Ron Watten's car on the road. I think that's him actually there. In the meantime, let's go back again to the pit area and Gary Wilkinson.
Well, Jim Richards has just been in and out of the pits in the left-hand drive BMW, which is, of course, a brand new car. And I'm going to have a quick word with Frank Gardner, the JPS BMW team manager. Frank, what did Jim have to say?
Jim's got no problems. We just had the problem. We couldn't get a wheel nut undone. Brand new wheel and it a jam. But there we are. But no problems with the motor car.
This car only went on the track, I think, Oran Park on Tuesday or Wednesday, wasn't it?
We've really fired up for the first time down here Friday, and we've been working away at it over the weekend to get it organised. It seems to be running all right now, but we just changed 2 tyres of precautionary measure, and generally it all seems to be running all right. it's early days. Okay.
Car 31, the car they're talking about, which should be coming under Dunlop Bridge fairly soon, I think. It's a black car, quite distinctive. In the meantime, that's George Fury we're watching. And more action in the pits. Cars are really weaving in. Some of these are scheduled. This is Charlie O'Brien coming in. He's been running very well up in, what was 6th place. Charlie O'Brien bringing the Commodore in. Clive Benson-Brown may take over from him, or may elect that Charlie stays in the car. We'll just see. No, they're changing over. You can tell Clive Benson-Brown by the shock of hair projecting from beneath the crash helmet. He runs a disco down in Tassie and is about to get in the car and really do some shaking out there on the track. He's well placed. 6th place is a good position to be in. This is a scheduled pit stop, so there's undoubtedly no problem with the car. Charlie O'Brien not so happy in the earlier race when he ran in the Formula 1, or Australian Formula 1, Formula Pacific race, where he touched John Bowen, went off the track and did a lot of damage to his car. There's Clive Benson-Brown at the wheel now, gets the okay. There is a speed limit on the pit area. 20 kilometres an hour is the maximum speed they're supposed to do. I think most drivers go a little bit faster than that, but Clive Benson-Brown doing the right thing, threading his way into the traffic, and off he goes for the first nervous lap at the wheel of the car. Must be a great strain on a co-driver taking over John Shepherd.
It is, Evan. There's a whole lot of things on his plate, as you'd realise, and one of the terrible things that happens in these pit stops, quite often the cars will boil the brake fluid, and the bloke arrives out there with no brakes and all sorts of terrible things, so it is very difficult, as you say.
On lap 66, Alan Moffat closing on the leader, but our 3rd place getter, the Marlborough Holden dealer team driver, John Harvey, slipping well back, and he's now 42 seconds behind car number 43, Alan Moffat.
Seconds now, the gap, so it's diminishing all the time between Alan Grice and Alan Moffat. Then a very sizable gap back to John Harvey, who has the Eurocars Valvoline Mazda of Terry Shield starting to close on him.
That was a quick pit stop, but look how he's had to wait for a gap in the traffic. Lost 5 seconds.
On lap 68 in the Castrol 400, and Alan Moffat closing that lead all the time very, very quickly now on our leader, Alan Grice. Grice leading now by only 5.5 seconds. John Harvey still 3rd, but a long way back.
And Fred Gibson in 56, the Turbo Bluebird, had just made a pit stop. The quickest we've seen of the race so far, out in less than 20 seconds. New tyres, fuel in, and he'll go the rest of the race. Fred, the man who won for Ford, the first of the V8 victories way back in 1967, and launched the V8 revolution. Now he's doing his best to end it, driving a 4-cylinder car, turbo, which could be the way of the future.
John Goss and the Jag also still motoring around quite nicely too in the field, trying to get the car fully sorted for the James Hardy 1000 Classic at Mount Panorama Bathurst on October 3rd. Traffic very congested there as they come underneath Dunlop once again. Down the front straight here at Sandown Park, there's Goss going through on number 10.
He's had a bump by the look of it, Mike. If we look at an angle next time we get a chance on the right-hand front, there seems to be some sort of damage there. He may just have touched something. I don't think it's part of the intended design of the Jaguar XJS. It just shows you how quickly some of these cars go, how highly developed they are under the rules of Australian touring car racing. Not standard cars, but here we have a Jaguar developed for Group A racing, which is the European style of racing.
Apologise for the brake and transmission from Sandown. There's an electrical fault which we are working on, And now we're back live. Let's bring you up to date on the positions in lap 70. We're into now the Castrol 400. Still our leader is Alan Grice in car number 4. And in second place, Alan Moffat, car number 43. But that gap is very, very close indeed. It's only now about 2 seconds, Evan Green.
It is indeed, yes. We lost power a little bit. Just shows you one glance at Channel 10 and you're in trouble. And you can see also that John Goss, who is running the XJS, has had a coming together with a car. You look at the outside of the car, which we'll see now, there are scratch marks here. The front has been touched. The side of the car also has been touched. John doesn't have much sponsorship. It's very much a solo effort, a fairly brave effort by him. You can see there the damage to the mudguard. Fairly superficial, but will be affecting the handling of the car a little bit at very high speed. And the car certainly is capable of that. 5.3 litres V12, got more cylinders than anyone else. Not quite as big as the big Falcons, which are 5.8 litres, but still one of the big and heavy cars. And he's been following a pioneer's path of trying to develop this car for motor racing. And today is very much a developmental exercise for him, just to get the car going well.
It won't be too long. We have the race lead change probably coming up now as they come down towards Alan Grice, giving way to Alan Moffat at the end of the front straight. They'll go past the pits now and head towards Arco Corner. And it won't be long before you see Alan Grice coming in for his pit stop.
Talking of pit stops, we just caught a glimpse then of number 18, which is the veteran Murray Carter in the pits for his second stop. And car number 4 has got to the lead. Is it? No, yes, 4 still in front by 0.7 seconds from 43. He's in the pits. That's what's happened. No wonder we can't find him. So, Gary, what's happened? We've got the leader in the pits.
Yes, Alan Grice is in the pits and the crew working frantically, as you can see, again changing the right side tyres, front and rear. Fuel going in, 1, 2, second churn going in. Grice indicating that he wants a drink because, boy, it really is hot work out there, and he's been driving a demon of a race. And this car, this Commodore, is really going like smoke here this afternoon, and Grice wants to make every post a winner, as you can see. The crew working frantically. Tyres changed, front one's right, left one, the right rear rather, slight problem, taking just a little longer than it should to take. This is a slow pit stop. They should be much quicker than this. Grice is getting very anxious. Pit officials got their hands up. Don't go yet, Grice. The jack is still under the car. They're still having trouble with this right rear wheel. Now they've got it right. The jack is not out from under the car. The jack is jammed. Now it's out. Go, Grice, go. And he's away, but it was a very slow pit stop under the circumstances and should have been faster. Out goes Gary Cook, and the Cook and Cullen Commodore right behind him as well. Action fast and furious here in the pits, but not a good pit stop for Alan Grice.
Well, there's a car coming into the pits, by the way, that's losing its back tyre, not exactly its back wheel, but the Roadways car, young Neil, it's Barry Jones. No, it can't be right. I must read my numbers wrong. It's Neil Harrington, I'm sure, in the Commodore, bringing the car in the Roadways car. I think it is Stephen Harrington, rather. Bringing his Commodore in. He's had a flat tyre. The wheel is almost separated from the car. And Terry Shield is in the pits as well, I think, Gary. You're having a busy time there.
Yeah, that's correct, Evan. Terry Shield has come in, and he's also had a very, very quick pit stop. Of course, he, after Alan Moffat, constitutes perhaps the major RX-7 threat. He's been running consistently a little back in the field, but that quick pit stop is going to help things when it gets down towards the crunch at the end of the race.
We've just had information, by the way, Gary, from our scorers here, that cars number 40, which is the, let me see, that's Peter McLeod in the Mazda RX-7, and 43, which is Alan Moffat, have both been given a penalty, I assume a 1-minute penalty, for excessive speed in the pit area. They've exceeded the speed limit, so if Alan Moffat is in front, he has at least a 1-minute penalty to overcome for travelling too quickly down the pit lane.
Well, Evan, I'll make my way down to the Alan Moffat pit crew and see if I can get some comment from them on that.
I'm sure you'll get a good one, Gary.
All right, well, that's happening. Let's check the leaders in Class C and Class D. Leading Class C at the moment is car number 61. That's the Graham Bailey Steve Land Toyota Celica. In second place is car number 66. That's the Peter Beninka and Joseph Beninka Alfa Romeo. And in third place is car number 59, the Martin Power Gerald K Triumph Dolomite. In Class D, the leader is car number 76. That's the Ian Burrell and Bob Shute Mitsubishi Colt Mirage. And in second place there, car number 68 is the Alan Goff Isuzu Gemini. And in third place there in Class D is car number 74, which is the Peter Boston Isuzu PF50. So there we are, the positions in Class C and Class D after lap number 73.
It'd be interesting to get the from our Phillips scoreboard people a gap between Alan Moffat and John Harvey to see whether it goes over the minute to give Moffat that buffer, just in case a 1 minute penalty has been given against Moffat for speeding into the pit area. Keeping in mind John Harvey still has to pit.
About to pass the radial shod Mazda of Jerry Burgess. Not as highly developed as Alan Moffat's car, not running on race rubber. And there's the Phillips scoreboard, which shows you that Moffat is in the lead from car 25, which is the John Harvey Marlborough Holden Middleton Commodore. Car 4, now with Clive Benson, with Alan Grice after his pit stop rather, is in third spot, and Terry Shield running fourth. But there's Alan Moffat. May not get but he has a minute penalty. He's losing some of the trimming from around his mudguard flare on the front right-hand side of the cake. See it flapping in the breeze. Shouldn't be any problem. You'll see it though as the car spins around here, just flapping behind the right-hand front wheel if you're quick.
Well, the pits have certainly provided some controversy this afternoon, gentlemen, haven't they?
Oh, with gearboxes being jammed, or gear shifts rather being jammed. You can see there I think it's just trimming, just the sealant between the flare, the extension, and the body itself. There's no problem there, no more than a distraction. Alan Moffat probably won't even see it. He's in a left-hand drive car, having built the car that way to make it handle this circuit, which is predominantly to the left, even better.
We'll see Moffat come through this corner now amongst some of these slower cars. John Harvey coming in for his pit stop, which will probably move Alan Grice up into second place and Terry Shield into third.
Is that Brock or not?
Is it Peter Brock going to take over, or is it Gary Scott? No, sticking to Gary Scott. The young Queensland driver getting in. A very large responsibility on his shoulders, isn't it, Gary Wilkinson?
Yes, Gary Scott in the car, and the tyres being changed on the right side front. We've got the clock on this pit stop because it is a final one for the second of the Marlborough Holden dealer team cars. The front right wheel changed, left right wheel changed. Harvey just helping to strap Gary Scott in, set to go, door closed, fuel is on. We make way for another car squeezing past in the pits. There is definitely not much room and only lost all 10 toes. Slight delay here. Scott not quite ready to go, some problem. This is awkward. Harvey at the rear of the vehicle is getting pretty anxious. Why isn't he moving? Here he goes. And Gary Scott is out of the pits in about 50 seconds. That really wasn't quite as fast as they would have liked, but Gary Scott now behind the wheel, and the second of the Marlborough dealer thin cars still running quite well.
An enormous responsibility now on the young Queensland driver. They're now 64 seconds behind the leader, so Alan Moffat has the margin that he needs. He is more than a minute in front. It's an enormous load on the shoulders of this young driver, the young Queenslander Gary Scott, to expect him now to try and haul in Alan Moffat. He will have been told if anything is wrong with the car. The wise old head of John Harvey will have given him a nice little rundown on what to look for, and he'll be told to take it gently, just to keep on going. He's being pressed at the moment by George Fury in the Turbo Bluebird, and he'll give him a hard time for a while because he knows there's a new man in the car, and he won't make it any easier for him if he possibly can. Maybe try and get by him, but Gary Scott will just feel his way around the track, see how the car feels, try the brake pedal out. Oops, and I mustn't do that again, or I'll end up getting a flat tyre, and they won't be very happy with me then. He'll be running with John Harvey at Bathurst as his co-driver. Larry Perkins will double up with Peter Brock. On the long straight, he pulls away a little bit from the turbo of George Fury, but Fury will close up a little bit under brakes. And Fury, who's been in the car all the time, knows how it handles, is the old hand as far as this race is concerned, having covered 76 laps.
Gary Scott, in the completion of one lap, finds himself in amongst whole barrel load of traffic there, which he manages to handle with good ease, and Alan Moffat finds the same problem. Anxious arms waving out to pass on this side, but it was very difficult because he had them almost two abreast.
You can see where the headlight has been broken on the car when John Harvey had to spin to try and avoid the car that actually spun on that corner before him. The cover is gone. The car's okay, of course, just cosmetic damage, but it does bear that slight scar, that bruised eyebrow from the incident, which did cost them so much time and put them back in the field. Alan Moffat, the race leader, facing a 1 minute penalty for excessive speed in the pit straight. Officials very severe on such things. Have also penalised Peter McLeod in car 40, the Strongbow Cider RX-7.
There's Gary Scott with Alan Moffat coming up to put one lap on the number 25 Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore, and he will probably work to the inside as they come down the straight.
So we have our second and first cars together. Running second is car 25. The leader, Alan Moffat, right behind him.
Well, Alan Moffat's been pretty critical of some of Australia's motor racing circuits. I'm just wondering, first of all, whether he knows about the minute penalty. And I wonder, too, how he feels about driving generally at here, the Sandown Raceway.
It's nice to get back to Sandown after a year. We start here in February. And we go to a lot of the shorter, tighter circuits. And it's nice to get onto a circuit where the car actually is going very fast. The vehicle speed is up, and obviously your nerves have to be on the razor's edge to get the best out of the car. We don't have enough fast circuits in Australia, and in that respect, Sandown is always a nice warm-up for Bathurst, because certainly if there's a fast circuit, Bathurst is one of them. It's important to us here to get our RX-7 handling the best we can. We've spent as much time as we can within the framework of testing, because we can't test here. Being in the Springvale Council area, the circuit is not open for private testing, so we only get a shot at developing the car during the practice sessions on the race weekend, and it's very difficult to get every little thing you want. So if there's ever a letdown with any component parts, you can be out of the ballpark very quickly. I'm happy to say this weekend our car's gone extremely well. My team have worked extremely hard to give me a good car. I don't mind driving fast here, and when you have a good, safe car and you feel confident about it, the times automatically go quickly.
Wise words from Alan Moffat. Everything seems to be coming up roses for Alan today. We've seen a couple of dramatic changes up around the front of the field, but Alan Moffat continues to stretch that lead. Gary Wilkinson will cross to you for an update in the pit area.
Mike, thank you very much. Yes, they're talking about Alan Moffat. I've just had a word with Alan Horsley in his pit area here, and they have not been informed of this alleged 1-minute penalty. Alan Horsley says that as he understands any regulations in this country, you cannot be penalised for speeding in the pit lane. They can fine you, they can disqualify you, but they can't penalise you a minute for speeding in the pit lane. And he said if they do, that'll be the biggest protest that you've ever heard in motor racing. Back to you.
Thank you.
Well, I was going to make the comment before. I'm quite sure if Alan Moffat doesn't win by over a minute, this race will be settled in the Supreme Court, because I'm sure he wouldn't lay down for that. It's a subjective thing. Who's to say what's fast and what's slow? And I can see, as I say, all sorts of long, drawn-out arguments about that, which we don't need.
Maybe they've got a radar device down there.
Possibly so, Peter.
All right, we're on lap 79 of the Castrol 400, which you're watching live from Sandown in Melbourne.
Only, 21 years of age, I think, just a young driver. Rejoins the race. We're running with Garth Wigston in the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst on October 3rd.
Alan Grice still sits in second place in the Castrol 400, 1 lap, plus 10.5 seconds behind Alan Moffat. And John Harvey, the second of the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores, number 25 and third. Fourth place being held down by number 11 over Terry Shield.
There's Alan Grice. We were trying to think if Alan has won a major race, and the only one we can recall was the Ready Plan, I think it was 400 at Phillip Island back in 1977. So it's been a long time between major successes. Always been one of the best drivers, always been up there in contention, but just hasn't managed to win one of the really big ones.
Lap 82 at Sandown. Alan Moffat increasing his lead at the moment. Still have to ascertain if that 1-minute penalty will apply for excessive speed in the pits. Yet to be confirmed, but Moffat has the lead anyway over car 4 Alan Grice, and John Harvey in the Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodore still in third place. Car number 17, the Dick Johnson Ford, is currently in 8th place. Back to Gary Wilkinson in the pit area.
Thanks very much, Peter Landy, and I've got Peter Brock with me. Well, Brocky, it's not the happiest of days for you.
No, we started off the day well this morning, but well, that's life, I guess, because I've had a very good run here at Sandown over the years, and I knew something was bound to happen. And really, what did happen was remarkably simple. Bolt came out of the gearbox extension housing and let all the oil run out, and I didn't know where it was coming. I was waiting for a bit of advice from anyone who happened to be lying on the track looking under it, but I reckon it was the gearbox because the oil was coming onto the exhaust and blowing smoke out the back, etc. And we replaced that and away I went again, but we couldn't refill the oil.
I hesitate to say this, but would that be something that was overlooked in preparation of the car? Was it not tightened or what?
Well, it was tightened. It had you know, no. It did work itself loose. It fretted itself loose. But without any doubt, it should never, ever have happened. Because in my experience of motor racing, not only do you put a little bit of gunk on the thread to stop them coming loose, but you also put a lock wire on the damn things, and then they never come out, and this never had a lock wire on it. It's a question I was asking in the pits, and I can assure you it won't happen again.
Gary Scott's out there in 25 now. How are they going?
Yes. John had fallen off the pace there. He was doing 16s, and they didn't know whether to pull him in or not. They sort of left it to John, and I came along, and I said, how fast are you going? He said, 16s. I said, pull him in, because it'll give a good chance for Gary to have a run, and no point in running around in 116s. We've got to be doing 113s to be keeping with Moffat, so it's a good opportunity to do a bit of chassis testing right now, and well, they could still finish up at a nice pace.
At the front, it's a frantic pace. Who's going to survive?
Well, Moff's looking pretty good here, but I notice he's got all these tyres out in the ground here. Perhaps he's coming in again. But it's, well, it's about the speed we thought the race would run at. I was very, very happy the way my car was going. It was percolating along very nicely. It didn't seem to be misbehaving in any way. So what we'll do now is go back, correct the problems we have found, and go to Bathurst with a bit more confidence what we would have had we not been here.
Okay, Peter Brock, thank you very much. And as Peter quite rightly observed, if you look just behind him, you can see that tyres are out on the strip waiting for Alan Moffat to come in for yet another pit stop. We'll stand by for that, and meantime, take you back to Mike Raymond.
Thank you, Gary. Perhaps Bobby Morris might be able to come and move some of the tyres for him before Alan comes in for his pit stop. So I think with that edge that he has over everyone, 1 lap plus 11 seconds, Alan Moffat can justifiably come into the pits.
And Dick Johnson moving up into position number 4, so he's moved up 3 placings in the last couple of laps. Dick Johnson making a late bid, 84 laps completed, 110 is the set distance of the Castrol 400.
It's Terry Shield there making a move on the young Queenslander Scott. There, Dick Johnson just coming down the bottom of the circuit. He's running in 4th place, just in front of Terry Shield in number 37, then car 25. Which after the pit stop, which is where Gary Scott is. And just there, turned just ahead of George Fury in car 55, the Turbo Bluebird, and then car 19, a car we haven't seen, which is the Greg Topfer, Ken Matthews Holden Commodore running for Citizen Watches, and that's car number 19, making up the top 10 for the first time. Dick Johnson in 4th place.
Evan, back onto this 1-minute penalty business. I've just been looking up the supplementary regulations, and there's a few things come into it. First of all, if a driver is given a 1-minute penalty, his pit has to be notified. That's the first part of the story.
They haven't been, have they?
Well, they don't claim they have been, or they claim they haven't been, shall we say. The next part of the story, it says here, and it's quite clear, in the sub-regs, where do we go? Penalty for if in the opinion of any pit observer, a driver has failed to give regard to the safety of other competitors, crew or officials, he shall, at the discretion of the clerk, of course, have 1 minute added to his race time or action initiated against him before the stewards of the meeting. Now, unfortunately, Alan Horsley was saying that it's not in the regulations. It's in the regulations, and part of the entry, they sign that they will agree to be bound by the sub-regs, and unfortunately, if someone does slap a 1-minute penalty on him, I'm afraid he's going to have to wear it.
Well, 1-minute penalty plus an extra pit stop, which may be facing him, would be a very heavy load for Alan Moffat to bear at this stage. Dick Johnson going round, not quite on the same pace, but there and very close. And in front of him, we still have Alan Grice, and we still have car 11, Clive Benson-Brown, so he's got a couple of cars in front of him. And, of course, he has to catch this man, Alan Moffat, going very hard, taking nice, smooth lines, though. If the tyres are laid out, ready for use, it suggests that tyre wear has been heavier than they thought. Can you see any signs in the way the car is handling, though, John Shepherd, that he's having problems with his rubber? Because to me, it looks pretty good.
No, he seems to be handling quite well, as you say, Evan, and I guess if they're coming in, as we've said before, if he needs fuel, and it would be just a precaution to stick new rubber on it, I would say. It's a lot longer to fuel the car than to put the tyres on, so they usually just throw them on to be sure that they've got nice fresh tyres, because the cars do go quicker on them.
Another bit of information we've got from the officials is that car number 56, running second in Class B, at Freddie Gibson's Bluebird, has also also been penalised for excessive speed in pit lane. So that makes 3 now. Alan Moffat in 43, Peter McLeod in 40, and now Fred Gibson in car number 56. The officials are busy today, aren't they?
Well, as we said before, it is a very restricted pit area, and I believe it's in the interest of all concerned to keep those speeds down because someone could get hurt.
Leading in the Class C at the moment is the Graham Bailey Steve Land Toyota Celica. Leading in Class D is car number 76. That's the Ian Burrell Rob Shute Mitsubishi Colt Mirage.
The car we just saw pass there, the Jim Fanico Alan Goff Gemini, it's entered as an Isuzu P something or other because they don't make a coupe in Australia, so they've imported the Japanese body and they call them Isuzu PF50. Yeah, it's in actual fact a coupe version of the Holden Gemini, except they have the Japanese body, which is lighter. And of course, with weight being such a critical element, particularly in under 1.6 litres, which is what the category that Jim Fanico's running in, the more weight you can take off the car, the better. There's another one, 83, another one of the PF50s. That one driven by Lester Smurden and Jeff Noble.
Alan Moffat again, coming up through slower traffic.
Just passing the little Mitsubishi Colt, another 1.6 litre car. That's probably the 1.4 version, although the car is about to get a 1.6 litre engine in production. A very fast car for its size, but out here on the racetrack, it's against some pretty impressive sort of cars. Let's look at some of the classes, by the way. Class B for 2 to 3 litres. George Fury, Fred Gibson. This is coming via the Phillips scoreboard. Fred Gibson, who's now been penalised, maybe 1 lap. We're not sure what the penalty will be for going fast. And the man who started from the tail end of the field, Jim Nihill, the South Australian Bachelor of Economics graduate. 3 laps now, but running in 3rd place. His first ever outing here at Sandown Park, which is a great result for the young South Australian driver.
The speed through the pit area has been of concern to officials at a number of tracks around Australia for pit stops. James Hardy 1000, I believe that speed humps are being put in the pit area to prevent the drivers from speeding excessively in and out during their pit stops.
There's Fred Gibson, the latest one to be penalised for allegedly driving at excessive speed when going into the pits. And there's an enormous temptation there for them to go a little faster than they're supposed to, particularly if the pit happens to be up the far end and they've got to get there. They want to get there quickly or get out quickly. And just need some eagle-eye official at one end of it to say, hey, that's a bit too quick, or else almost have his toe run over to lodge a report. And Fred Gibson, who's been around for a long time, been racing for 20-odd years, he's the latest to cop a penalty. By the way, Jerry Burgess in the unusually painted little Mazda RX-7, the car just behind him, the black and silver car, the only car in the race running on radial ply tyres. A new type being launched in a week or two. They cost about $250 per tyre, so they're way up in the Pirelli P7 class, but the same sort of tyres have been used at Le Mans in the 24-hour race, at Daytona in the 24-hour race, and the car they ran at Le Mans, which won its class, was a Porsche Turbo. It had used 5 tyres in the entire race, one of which was punctured. So they just don't wear out.
You know, that old story about changing the car when the tyres wear out, or the other way around, change the car. I'll get it right in a minute. Yeah,
but I was talking to Jerry and I was saying, you know, are the tyres a disadvantage? He said, well, they're not racing tyres, but if it rains, I've got a real chance because they are compromised tyres. They can do well in dry and in the wet.
Yeah.
Jerry Burgess, car number 33, the only car in the field running on radial ply tyres. The new sort, the Comp TA American tyres, designed specifically by BF Goodrich, the oldest American tyre company, to be the best tyre in the world. Whether they succeed or not is a subjective matter, but they've matched them against tyres like the Pirelli P7. They cost about $250 a tyre, so they're not a cheap retread by any means. But they run these tyres at Le Mans, the 24-hour race, at Daytona on cars there. They ran the full Le Mans race on a Porsche Turbo, and the car used a total of 5 tyres, one of which was punctured. That is a most remarkable achievement. Jerry Burgess, only a young driver, and the company has taken a bit of a gamble with him, I would think. Car number 44, another one of the Mazdas. There are, how many? 9 of them in the race. The second most popular car in this event. 14 Commodores, 9 Mazda RX-7s, 7 Falcons.
And Dick Johnson has moved up to 3rd place on lap 91, so we've got 19 laps to go. Alan Moffat still leading by a lap and 12 seconds. In 2nd place is one-time race leader Alan Grice. Moffat leading by a lap and 12 seconds. It remains to be seen if he'll be penalised that minute for excessive speed in the pits, and if he will make another pit stop for the tyres that we saw laid out in the pit area before. Yet to be proven. 19 laps to go. Johnson into third place.
And that's Dick Johnson. Paul Owen Jones, I think his name is, in the Mazda behind him, number 44. We saw him against the fence early in the race. Has recovered very well. Getting a bit of a tow. You definitely do get an advantage by getting behind a quick car. It breaks a passage through the air and you gain an aerodynamic effect if you can stay close enough. An area of suction, of low pressure, which will speed you along. Oh, Dick Johnson waggling the tail there suggests that maybe he is not too far distance before he has to come in and change his rear tyres.
Certainly, if he keeps that up, it won't be long.
Well, I don't know whether it was his dodging cars or whether it was just a tyre letting go. He did lose this race last year through tyre problems. It is a problem. The cars are heavy. They're not allowed to run the width of wheel that they would like. The rules under which Australian touring cars do race restrict the size of the rear tyres to 10 inches, and 10-inch tyres are made in a whole variety of sizes, but it means, of course, that light cars, like the Mazda RX-7 and the Datsun turbos, can run 10-inch wide rubber. What the Falcon fellows and the Chevrolet Camaro and the Jaguar XJS would like to run would be 12-inch wide rims, because they can then buy the right size rubber designed for cars of this weight. They're not allowed to at the moment. In fact, it was that restriction that stopped a few people running in the CRC 300 at Amaroo. They felt in the big cars they didn't have the right tyres. And maybe Dick Johnson is beginning to suffer the same sort of problem. He's running a car that is almost under tyre. And when you look at the weight of that car compared to the Mazda, it does seem a bit ridiculous that they both are compelled to run the same width rubber, or can't go beyond that width.
I guess the thought in what you're saying is quite good, Evan. The question that does tend to raise its head is people changing rules.
Yeah, talking to rules, I'm wondering if that's Alan, if that's Gricey. Car number 4. There are a couple of recars there. It looked like the man who is running in second place, having himself an awful moment on Arco Bend. He didn't hit the Arco, but gee, he had a good look at it. Dick Johnson threaded his way through, and while we watch Dick Johnson, back again to John Shepherd.
As I was saying, even one of the problems that we have managed to get ourselves into in the Confederation and in motorsport in general is changing rules halfway through the year, so that people don't really have an understanding. They can't gear themselves for years unchanged motor racing, and unfortunately, if those people want those big tyres, they're going to have it at the beginning of a year, not halfway through, because it's impossible to try to set up a team and say, right, that's the cards we're playing with, and someone changes the deck halfway through.
And the change, of course, was the appearance of the Mazdas and the Nissan Turbos cars that went much faster than they thought. They suddenly need more power, they need the greater handling capacity of a wider tyre, but they're not going to get it for Bathurst, and they certainly don't have it today.
Lap 93 of 110 in the Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. We're watching Dick Johnson battling his way through some of the slower cars. Oh, that corner again, which suggests again that maybe Johnson's tyres are going off. Another problem there from one of the other cars. So they could have some oil spilled down there. Very, very slippery. Has brought a couple of drivers undone during the afternoon.
Well, he lost the Perrier Cup at Oran Park 2 weeks ago through having to make a last-minute stop to change the back tyres. We might see whether Gary Wilkinson can go into the pit area to Dick Johnson's pit and see whether he's going to come in for a change of tyres. In the meantime, Gary, you might be warned that car 55, George Fury, is coming into the pits. The car is going slowly down the straights. It looks as though George Fury does have a problem in the turbocharged Bluebird. Dick Johnson weeding his way through traffic. And here comes, talking of weaving their way through things, through the entrance to the pit area, going at a very gentle speed, is George Fury, arm up on the windscreen. He must have been looking at Sydney taxi drivers, I think, the way he's driving, leading the class, in an outright position, running in 9th place, just telling the crew what the trouble is. Up goes the bonnet. They may put tyres on, they'll certainly put fuel in the car. Some anyhow, yes, some maybe to do with the turbo. It's buried down on the right-hand side. A man with very brave thoughts, or maybe insulated fingers. Yep, he burnt his fingers. He's just seeing what's wrong. The turbocharger is an exhaust gas-driven supercharger, and it gets very, very hot. It spins at revs to 120,000 RPM, 10 times per minute. Behind him in the pits is Peter Jansen, his second stop, the Cadbury Schweppes Commodore, the man who's finished second on 2 occasions at Bathurst. Having a few problems, but very much a developmental exercise. In the meantime, as Jansen goes out, the crew just looking at things gently. We'll go over to Gary Wilkinson and see if we can find out what the problem is.
Okay, Evan, let's see if we can move in here and just find out what is transpiring. Obviously, at the moment, they don't look like going anywhere with this car. Let's find out if we can just what the problem is.
Yes. This connections to the turbocharger has let us down.
End of the race?
I beg your pardon.
Is it the end of the race?
No, we will repair it, but it's the end of our competitive race this time. But we've learnt a tremendous amount, and we look forward to seeing you again at Bathurst.
Okay, well, there you are. That's the answer. The problem that still has to be sorted out with the Bluebirds that they experienced at Oran Park, the same thing has arisen here again with George Fury's car at Sandown, and it really has ended their competitive status here today. But as you heard Martin say, that they really hope to get it sorted out, and they'll be there and in the firing line at Bathurst. While I've got you, I can also tell you Alan Moffat has not been informed of the 1-minute penalty by his pit crew, because his pit crew say they have not been officially informed. And so they're not going to worry Alan into that situation at the present time, because it would only add to the load that he's already carrying. With regard to the Dick Johnson situation, I haven't been able to ascertain from them whether or not he's planning to come in, but I'm making my way up to their pit now as you continue to watch the race, and we'll find out what is going on and whether or not. We'll see if we can get a word from Jill as to what's going to happen here. And here we go. We'll just stick the microphone in and we'll find out. What's the program for Dick? Is he going to come in?
No, not at the moment, Gary.
Not at the moment, or not at all?
No, hopefully not at all.
So he's got fuel and tyres that will last out?
I beg your pardon?
He's got fuel and tyres that will last?
Yes, should last now.
All right, well, that's the message regarding Dick Johnson. He's out there, and he's out there to stay, so Alan Moffat really is going to have to watch himself. Back to you, mate.
Thank you, Gary. And Dick Johnson is only a matter of, I was going to say 5 point some seconds behind car 4, but while I'm saying that, I'm looking at the wicker going on Alan Moffat's car again. It looks like he's going to come into the pits. He put the signal on to his pit crew as he went by. This could be the stop that you were referring to, Gary, where he comes in for tyres. He certainly signalled with his winkers as he went by in pit straight that he was intending to come in. He's going very quickly. There's no problem with the car, apparently. He's running well, but he was signalling to the pits, so we'll keep our eye on Alan Moffat. Leading the race, he has 1 lap plus 14 seconds over the second car, which is car 4, Alan Grice's Commodore. He may have to bear a 1-minute penalty, depending on what the officials decide. And the gap then back to Dick Johnson.
And John Harvey getting very close to Charlie O'Brien for 4th place. And while that dice is going on, I could inform you that the attendance at Sandown today is an all-time record of 60,850. 60,850, an all-time record for a Sandown 400, and I'm sure race officials and Castrol officials would be delighted with the turnout here this afternoon.
Well, those 60,000 people who've come here have seen themselves a great motor race with many incidents happening, and most of them in the pits with the problems that some of the leaders have had. If you missed the early stages of the race, we had Peter Brock leading very easily in the early stages. Moffat didn't pull in, he went by. He's going on for another lap. He did this before, so goodness knows what's going on. But Peter Brock led until he slowed with a leak from the gearbox extension. A bolt had come out. He went back out again, but had lost so much oil from the gearbox that he had to retire from the race. So the man who has won here 8 times, including the last 7 years in succession, is out of the race. Alan Grice then led for a long time until passed by this man, Alan Moffat, in car 43, the Peter Stuyvesant Racing Team Mazda RX-7. But he may be facing a 1-minute penalty for having travelled at excessive speed in the pit area when he came in for a stop.
That was in lap 47 too, so maybe at some later stage we can check on that. I think we had a shot of Moffat's car in the pits, and it will be interesting to just have a look and see what speed he did go down through the pit area.
Might also be interesting to contemplate if he does make another pit stop, he might get another minute penalty.
Well, with 2 minutes, that would really put him behind the 8 ball, John.
And while we're watching Moffat, car 25, which is Gary Scott, has just passed the car number 11, which is Clive Benson Brown. And you saw then that Moffat went by Dick Johnson. Now let's watch to see whether we have that characteristic tail spin of Johnson's car here. Follow Moffat first of all, just watch what happens. No, taken much more gently, but it seems to me that Johnson has slowed down a little bit, maybe to conserve the tyres. Bear in mind, though, that the oil has been spilled on that part of the circuit, and the slides we've seen from him maybe no more than that. This looks like the Moffat pit.
Moffat did slow down last lap around. I think had maybe contemplated going into the pits, but I think his position on the track with Johnson at that time is probably, we've had one, the recar number 16.
Gary Rogers.
Yeah, that's Ron Wanless driving. You know, the car that you may remember Gary Rogers said can't steer, won't turn.
He's right.
Well, he proved it. So he went a long way, but Ron Wanless seems to have caught it without hitting much more than the tyres at the beginning of Arco. Now it has back on the track. And he'll drive around for a while just to see whether any flat spots have been caused on the tyres. So happy to slide into that hole where he just couldn't get the car to come around the corner. And now Moffat hearing down the straight after John French, or the John French car with Alf Gann at the wheel. Gets by him. He's going into the pit area though. Just one gesture and a great cheer from the crowd when Moffat goes into the pits. Not now watch this man in motor racing. Hey, he's going fairly quickly into the start of the pits. We might end up with a 2-minute penalty. Look at the crowd. They're alive as Moffat goes in.
Yes,
this is the man leading the race.
To slow him down too as he's going through the pits.
A critical stop. Gary Whoops will be on the scene soon, but it is a very crowded pit area there. That was the world's quickest pit stop. We might ask Gary what they did. I couldn't see it was so quick.
Well, Evan, what they did, they put in half a churn of fuel, and it took them just a tick under 8 seconds to do it. And that was all. They didn't change the tyres at all. Moffat must have been getting pretty desperate in the fuel situation, because the signal went out that he was going to come in, and as you saw for yourself, he then stayed out for another 3 laps after that. And he's come in just for half a churn of fuel, no tyres. So he's hoping the tyres will last and that he can hold out against Dick Johnson. Of course, Johnson, as we mentioned before, doesn't plan another pit stop.
Okay, well, take a deep breath, Gary, because Murray Carter is coming back into the pits and he's blowing so much smoke that you're going to be short of breath. We'll let you take that deep breath and we'll be returning to the action here at Sandown Park in just a few moments.
Still running, is in 4th spot at the moment.
Alan Moffat continues to lead the Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. A good lead over Alan Grice and the Recar Commodore. Then 1 lap and 1 minute.
There's a spin. Gary Scott has gone. He went wide. He was very lucky not to catch the leader as he came back. Alan Moffat winking again as though he's going back to the pit. Surely not, but Gary Scott came out wide, had a spin, came back across the circuit. First of all, John Goss in the big Jaguar. Then we saw 43, the leader of the race, Alan Moffat. Oh, he's really finding himself in a desperate situation with John Goss there. Maybe John Goss didn't see the car. You saw bits of fiberglass being brushed across the track. And Goss in a car that is very large may just not have seen Alan Moffat in that small Mazda sneaking up on the inside, but they seemed to touch. There was certainly a shower of fiberglass. Moffat, by the way, now has a 66.4-second lead over Grice after his pit stop. So he's still in the lead. And look at the Jaguar go past him. Now, Moffat has slowed down. I know the Jaguar is a fast car, but Moffat certainly was as quicker before up the straight. So whether he has trouble or whether he reckons now is the time to start backing off with 8 laps to go, I don't know. He's certainly closing again as they come through the bends, right up on John Goss's tail, and almost gets the nose of the car knocked off. This is pretty desperate driving at the latter stages of the race. Again, that signal going. I can't understand whether he has just forgotten to turn the signal off or whether he really does intend coming back into the pits.
No, it's been on since his pit stop, Evan. He hasn't switched it off, in fact.
Let's take a look at a replay now.
Is being black flagged. Alan Moffat is being black flagged and required to come into the pits. But in the meantime, let's watch. Here comes Gary Scott. Yes, he just lost it, had a spin. Now look at how close it was. First of all, the Jaguar of John Goss, then the leader. Moffat comes in. Moffat into the pits. He's been called in. The officials have black flagged him. Let's see what for. I suspect it's to give him a lecture for driving so quickly down the pits. And you can imagine the frame of mind of the race leader being called in to be spoken to by an official. Let's watch, see who comes and gives him a message. Someone will say something. Well, all they told him is, for heaven's sake, take it easy. I can't see any official pass on the message, but his team manager would have been required to have told him something. He certainly was black flagged. He has lost some time through having to come in. His signal is still going, so he's just forgotten about it.
I would think Moffat maybe, or maybe his crew had been instructed to inform Moffat of a minute penalty or some other penalty. And I think the cursory stop at the pits and a shout through the window may do it for the rule book. But I don't know what possibly could have been conveyed to Alan Moffat.
It's quite possible, Mike, and I'm not saying I can't guess why they've done it, but certainly if they were trying to slow him down in the pits and he wouldn't slow down, to black flag him is an instant way of giving him a time penalty. He has to call in the pits, and it might have just been a bit of summary justice.
Well, there's Alan Moffat. Blinker's still going. He's been kept fairly busy. One man who was keeping him busy was John Goss in the XJS Jaguar, who, although some laps down to Moffat, was keeping him extremely busy on the front straight and certainly going up the hill on the back.
7 laps to go in the Castrol 400.
And I dare say the race won't be finished when our leader gets the checkered flag.
I think you could mark this one down to a provisional victory.
I'm sure that whoever speaks to Alan Moffat after the race will find a very tight-lipped Alan Moffat. He'll really be wound up after some of the incidents which have happened in this race, and he gets the full story of what is the official story about those alleged penalties.
Well, I won't be informing him, Alan, of a 60-second penalty in the pits, I can assure you of that.
Well, Moffat will be fairly wound up. Only, what, 5.5 laps to go. Got a lot of traffic to work his way through. A most important race for him.
And may I tell you again, the stewards are going out with the black flag onto the edge of the circuit on the front straightaway. With a black flag ready, the crowd has erupted. I think the crowd are well aware. And another black flag, I think, could be going to Alan Moffat in this drama incident-packed Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. The closing stages, 6 laps remaining, and a black flag, and the signal, we'll see who it's for.
I'm sure it is tantamount to disqualification. They're saying, come in the pits.
Certainly have a good excuse for not seeing it.
Yes, he was well shrouded then. It could be we'll see him forced to come in almost as the race is finished, because we are now on, what, lap 105, is it?
104.
Yes, well, he's only 105th lap, so only got 5 laps to go, or 6 laps. And he will be fuming there. The black flag pointed at him. They require him to come in again.
Moffat at that particular time past the start-finishing line was very, very busy on the inside and probably didn't see the black flag. Well, that'd be a good reason and probably win that point.
Well, now,
they're going to give it to him again anyway, so I
make
guess
sure he gets it. If, in fact, he is to be penalised 1 minute for excessive speed in the straight, which is what we've heard, it means then that he is 15 seconds behind car 4, which is Alan Grice. And if he has to go into the pits, of course, he'll be another 30 seconds or more behind. I can't recall any race in Australia with this sort of happening towards the end, particularly one of the importance of the Castrol 400. Alan Moffat driving for the Peter Stuyvesant team for Mazda. Such an important race. His comeback virtually, a man who, for a couple of seasons in the wilderness, the black flag is out. Is he going to go into the pits? No. Is he going to drive on and argue with them afterwards? That has happened before today.
Looks that way, doesn't it?
Same chap had the same problem once upon a time, ignoring black flags, and I guess if he's been in once, he's probably saying, well, why should I bother?
Well, he knows if he goes into the pits now, it's almost handing the race to Alan Grice, who is 47 seconds behind him on the road, possibly ahead of him if that minute penalty is to be applied. But I might suggest if there's even a suggestion of a penalty, the worst thing he could do would be to stay out on the track and ignore those black flags.
What would they do then?
Well,
he could be excluded from the... no doubt, if all this stuff happened, if he ignored a black flag, he would probably be charged with acts prejudicial to motorsport, which would mean every chance he would be excluded from the race. But we're preempting all the things that may happen, yes. For all we know. The only thing about ignoring a black flag, if in fact that's what's happening, we aren't aware. Perhaps some corner marshal or sector marshal has seen something hanging off the car, and it could actually be something potentially dangerous with the car. It may not be anything to do with what we're talking about at all.
Well, that's often the case for a black flag. It's in the interest of safety to bring them in either because of an oil leak or because of some damage to the car of which the driver may not be aware. You're quite right, John Shepherd. But let's see whether Alan Moffat elects to come into the pits. The race now, according to the Phillips lap scoreboard, is 107 laps.
And I think if you're a betting man, you would bet on Moffat not coming into the pits.
The understatement of the afternoon that time.
That's right.
Well, he went so close to the fence there that he's obviously going hard, not easing up as far as cornering is concerned. He's involved once again with Gary Scott. He's letting Gary go by. He will probably pass him under brakes at the end, but to see, he did that once before. The lighter car comes in deeper. No, he's sitting back. An awful lot of be going through his mind. There he goes now, spearing down deep into the corner. Very hard for a driver out there in the intensity of competition, worried about the track, looking at his gauges. Also to be going through what are the things like black flags and numbers. What are they doing? Why did they bring me in? He's not watching the telecast. He doesn't know what goes on. Neither do we, for that matter, but we may have a slightly better idea than he does. And it'll be a very confused Alan Moffat. The gap now is off to Grice. He's slightly bigger, 49.19 seconds. But if there's a middle penalty, he's behind. If there's to be some other penalty, he's really behind.
This drama charged Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. Laps ticking by as we go into the final stages of the event, with about 2 laps remaining. Moffat, the leader on the race board, 48 seconds or a little less than that in front of Alan Grice. If that minute penalty does come into account and goes against Moffat, Alan Grice will be the winner. Then back in third place, 1 lap and 108 seconds is number 17, of course, Dick Johnson.
Leading Class C, still car number 61. That's the Graham Bailey, Steve Land Toyota Celica, and they have covered 90 laps so far.
Well, it looks to me as though Moffat had slowed down a bit.
Yeah, he seemed to be travelling very slowly, yeah.
He was slow out of Arco, no doubt. Now over Rothman's Rise, he turned on a bit of spurt for his sponsor. But coming through the S-bend, yes, the last lap.
The last lap board was then given to Alan Grice when he went past.
So it would appear that they feel they've given him 3 or 4 minute penalties for his trouble, and they'll give the checkered flag to Alan Grice. Interesting piece of drama, shall we say.
Yes, I don't think the people will ever forget the 82 Castrol 400 from Sandown Park. Last lap board about to be given to Alan Moffat. Yes, it has. Black flag again at the ready.
There's the checkered flag is out now. Let's just see who they give it to, but they certainly gave the last lap board first to Alan Grice, who on the road is in second position, 48 seconds behind Alan Moffat. Well, a race of extraordinary incidents and a great deal of controversy. There's the Phillips scoreboard again for the last time here at the race.
We might keep an eye out for Grice as he comes down through the top part of the circuit through the S's, because I think Alan Grice will be given the checkered flag first. There's Alan Moffat working his way up towards Rothman's Rise. I'd say at the end of this race he'll have little to say.
Dick Johnson has just gone across the start.
Little to say that's polite.
Here's the checkered flag. It's going to go to Alan Grice. Hand up, and Grice takes the Castrol provisionally. The crowd has erupted here at the grandstand. Alan Moffat has yet to finish the race, although he was in the lead by 48 seconds. But perhaps 2 pit stop infringements for going too quickly through the pit area have played their part in the penalty against Moffat. But only time will tell that. But here comes Alan Moffat, actually leading the race. Crowd erupting now as the checkered flag goes out.
Well, a happening without precedent in Australian motor racing, where a man leading the race and leading it comfortably apparently has been penalised out of victory through alleged infringements in pit lane.
Well,
Lord the black flag. Alan Moffat is going around. He assumes he's won the race. He's going
to have his victory lap.
Start-finish line, yes. He's not going to pull into the pits as the other drivers are required to do. Neither was John Goss. He's going around for a lap as well. But Alan Moffat deciding he's going to go around and just see what this is all about. We have Peter Landy, who's the tallest of a lot of us, going down to the area just to talk to Alan Moffat when he comes in, and to Alan Grice, and to try and find out just what has happened. Well, what an extraordinary finish. Alan Grice apparently is the winner of the race. Alan Moffat, who was leading, apparently is not the winner. Whether he even comes second, we don't know. But the order as we have it is car number 4, which is Alan Grice in the Re-Car Commodore. First in the Castrol 400. Then car 17, Dick Johnson. 54 seconds behind in the Falcon XE for Tru-Blue. Car number 25, Gary Scott in the Marlborough Holden dealer team car. 1 lap down. Car number 11. It was Clyde Benson-Brown who shared that car with Charlie O'Brien. Another lap. Car number 16, the Commodore of Ron Wanless and Gary Rogers. And in 6th place, car 37, which is Terry Shields' Mazda RX-7.
Signalling to the cameraman.
Go away.
I'm afraid, Alan, it happens to be news. And if presidents can't force the press away, racing car drivers have about the same.
Yes, it's something we don't understand, Mike. I've been as guilty of it myself at Bathurst last year, trying to hide some news, and I'm afraid, as you said, when it's news, it's news.
Well, here's Gricey. I'm quite sure Alan Grice will act as though he's won as well.
I'm sure they're both going to act as if they have, so this will be very good. Well, perhaps I'll have 2 trophies, Mike. They could have 1 each.
Yes, well, a drop of Perrier and a little of the ringside with the Wrestlers.
Yeah.
Dick Johnson pulls up. Maybe he thought he won it.
Well, he hasn't. He's not waving his hand, so...
I dare say Alan would like to have a word with his pit manager, perhaps, after it's all over. Misunderstood the last message.
Yes, well, as we've heard said many times, the television camera is a microscope, isn't it? And you sort of see the harassed look on Moffat's face. He's obviously worked very hard, and it seems a pity.
It does, because he's driven extremely hard. However, there's more drama yet to unfold. We'll take a break. This is Motor Racing Live on the 7 Network around Australia, and we'll be back in a few moments. Welcome back to the drama-charged Castrol 400 from Sandown Park, and now with the lowdown on the Black Flag Showdown, it's down to Evan Green.
I'm at the start line at the end of the most amazing, the most controversial 400 here at Sandown. Alan Moffat, do you know what happened?
I can't begin to imagine.
You were given the black flag, what, about 5 or 6?
Given the black flag, I came in, I reported to my pits. As the rules indicate, there was nobody there to tell me anything to do. It's not a Sunday afternoon picnic. I went back out on the track again.
Have you had any message from the officials yet?
I have no idea what is going on. When you get black flagged, your pit is to be notified. You stop at your pits, you're told what's wrong, your car's on fire, your wheels are falling off, or what. Nobody there. I proceeded out again. I have no idea what they're doing.
Let's see if we can find
the race.
Alan's just going around the back. I'm looking for an official to try and find out what happened. I spoke to Ian McKnight, who's the secretary of the Light Car Club of Australia, the people who run the race. He didn't want to talk. He doesn't know the story, I assume, because Ian's a very communicative fellow. There's a group over there. I'll try and work my way through and see just what's going on. So let's just work our way through the crowd. You can hear the way that the crowd themselves are roaring, that this result has been received with the utmost of mixed feeling. Alan Grice getting a great cheer as he walks over there at the moment. But it's not the most popular victory. They like the man who wins the race to be the man who is in front at the finish. And that wasn't the case with Alan Grice. Great drive, though, he may have driven. Let's just get over here and see if we can find out what's going on. Dick Johnson's up ahead. I'm going to have a chat to him.
Let you know exactly what we think is going on.
Dick Johnson.
There's been some controversy.
Third place, Dick?
Well, I'm buggered if I know. There's that many stories I've heard so far. But we finished, that's all I'm concerned about.
Crowding for the car then, although I can't recall a result like this ever. No one knows what's happened. Alan is completely confused. And listen to the crowd.
An enormous crowd. I think it's probably one of the best meetings spectator-wise we've ever seen. So I just hope they find out the real outcome.
Of Castrol, Australia.
Let me just see one of the officials, see someone behind. You may not know any more about what happened, but do you know why the black flag was held out for Alan?
I believe it was because of going down the pit lane too fast. I'm not sure, you'd have to check with the meeting director about that, Evan.
Right. We had assumed that, and Alan said when he went into the pits there was no one there to tell him what it was, so he went out again. And he doesn't know whether he's been disqualified or penalised or what the result is.
Not sure, mate. Ian McKnight will be able to answer that.
We'll try and track him down. It's a very confusing scene here at the moment. The presentation taking place with Alan Grice. We'll cut to them, and you take it back again up there, Mike Raymond.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Castrol for their sponsorship of this event. I hope it's a long-standing one. I'm particularly pleased to have won today. We've had some pretty accurate information in the pits, and it appears that that'll be the way it'll work out. But I'm particularly happy to have won the race in BMW country. I enjoy beating them. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you bear with me for one more minute? Because there is a controversy and because it won't be decided until sometime into the future, I'm going to bring Alan Moffat up to the microphone so that you can hear his side of the story too. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Alan Moffat.
Congratulations, Alan.
It's a long time and a lot of hard work to get onto this lawn at Sandown. Brockie's been here for 7 years in a row. There seems to be something going on that if you don't drive a Commodore, you can't win a race around here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring somebody else up to the microphone who doesn't drive a Commodore either, and that's Dick Johnson, and we had him down a second. Ladies and gentlemen, from Queensland, Dick Johnson.
Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to all my sponsors.
Well, as you can see, the Castrol 400 has been surrounded in controversy, with Alan Grice being awarded the race. Second place provisionally being given to Dick Johnson, who makes his acceptance speech at the moment. The Stokes Trophy, of course, for the quickest and the most professional pit stop of the day went to the Recar racing team, and the driver, of course, was Ron Wanless. Well, that's it. The Castrol 400 from Sandown Park, one of the most dramatic charged touring car races I think that Australia has ever seen. To the viewers around Australia, don't forget, we'll have more motor racing action coming your way on October the 3rd when you join us for the James Hardy 1000 from Mount Panorama at Bathurst, the great race.
One particular class that we've got.